Chapter 39 to 38, Giant Demon of Soul Devourer. Chapter 39, Chapter 38, Giant Demon of Soul Devourer. The centaur's pressing offensive came to a halt. Zogo pulled out his now dull long spear and spat fiercely, "You inferior creatures, only the fear of death can make you obey." Despite his words, Zogo still commanded the centaur warriors to stop. They were the beloved of the giant dragon, and every decision must comply with the will of the red dragon. Besides, with the death of the tribe's greatest nemesis, the ogre tyrant Moergo, and the previous bloodthirsty slaughter, it was enough to soothe these centaur warriors' souls. "Lay down your weapons and kneel on the spot, awaiting Lord Karon's decision." Kali surrounded the ogres with the centaurs, and at this moment, there were still more ogres than the 200 centaur warriors Karon brought along. But after the death of the war leader in the tribe, the only remaining spiritual leader, Giant Demon, also spoke of surrender. These ogres no longer resisted and threw down their weapons, kneeling on the ground. The red dragon, along with the white dragon and blue dragon, slowly approached. The centaur warriors silently parted to create a passage, raising their nicked, blood-stained blades to salute their monarch. The ogres lying on the ground dared not move, but they didn't stop the red dragon's calm pace. He stepped onto the ogres blocking his path to Giant Demon Fafnir. The unresisting ogres screamed as the red dragon stomped them one by one, bursting into sprays of flesh and blood that splattered all around. Yet the ogres on the ground only trembled, some having their courage driven out entirely. One ogre even lost control from fear. A foul stench rose from the ground momentarily, before the red dragon crushed the ogre's head, using its vile blood and brain to mask the unpleasant odor without hesitation. Karon, who typically disliked letting the evil dragon blood interfere with his will, once he made up his mind, appeared exceptionally cold compared to the cruelty and brutality of other red dragons of his kind. Kneeling on the ground, Giant Demon Fafnir's face twitched as the red dragon's silent demeanor and heavy steps reverberated like heavy hammers stirring her heart lake. She lowered her hips, deliberately revealing her two full moons-like hips and breathtaking body curves after gathering her waist, trying to seduce Karon. The red dragon's robust body stopped in front of the giant demon, his dragon claws soaked in blood, dark but casting bright light colors. Fafnir lifted her face streaked with traces of blood, accentuating a fair complexion, her charming eyes flowing gently, conveying her submission and yielding, as if entranced by the giant dragon's mighty power. A captivating force radiated from the giant demon, no lesser than the temptation wielded by those succubi in the abyss, vividly expressed on Fafnir's perfect physique. It was a power frequently used by the ancient sea demons before they grew to become great demigods, who would enchant any creatures they saw, willingly bowing beneath their skirts or becoming food. Confident in this ability, Fafnir thrust her chest forward, revealing two round tender snow globes that leapt effortlessly from her collar, strapping her seductive voice with her deliberate allure. Her moist and bright red lips whispered with a voice akin to a singing tune, "Honorable Red Dragon, please forgive the ogre's offense. Fafnir is willing to lead the ogres in submission under your feet, volunteering to be your female slave, serving your powerful dragon body day and night." The seductive voice mixed with all sorts of implications and tempting spiritual power dared not enter the giant dragon's body, merely soothing and touching on the red dragon's physique, attempting to stir the dragon's body's reactions and a connection with his spirit. The giant demon's whispers and spiritual touches made the evil dragon blood within Karon's body restless. Though the juvenile dragon's sexual development was yet immature, an overwhelming desire for possession surged within Karon's heart. This desire made Karon fantasize about the charming female slave before him touching his body with her soft hands, her enticing red lips and fragrant spiritual tongue traversing his body, his hands tormenting full moons. Various fantasies made the red dragon's blood begin to boil. At this moment, the scales on the red dragon radiated a faint red glow, and the breath he exhaled gradually became tainted with the scent of lust, a precursor to the dragon's arousal. Karon did not forcefully suppress his physiological responses. He seemed divided into two parts with his body, lucidly witnessing the imaginary lusty scenes born from the rouse of dragon blood but maintaining coldness and firmness. Under the gaze of his will, the restless dragon blood must also submit. Tamed slowly, it flowed evenly within the giant dragon's body, still occasionally triggering some thoughts but unable to affect the red dragon's will. The red glow on Karon's body quickly faded. He sneered, "Is that all there is? Then I am very disappointed in you." Then he leaned down, extending his sharp claws towards the ogre giant demon's head. He had undergone another test of himself. Let this giant demon use death to vent his inner joy. The giant demon of immense spiritual power keenly sensed the breath of death. She did not understand why the giant dragon before her possessed such a resolute will, capable of resisting her temptation. Even the ogre tyrant Moergo was merely a plaything effortlessly manipulated by her. She originally intended to seduce this red dragon, then during the dragon's relaxed state, smoothly absorb the giant dragon's soul consciousness, yet her methods failed before this fearsome red dragon. Fear shrouded the giant demon's heart, her mind racing, finally abandoning her seductive tactics, no longer feigning calmness, shriekingly opened her mouth. "The juvenile dragons have been captured, I can help you rescue those juvenile dragons." Karon had already learned of the events from the white dragon and blue dragon's mouths. Thus, Karon's dragon claw paused above the giant demon's head, lightly stroking the trembling head. He stated blandly, "You better have a plan that can be implemented, not simply fabricating out of fear of death, otherwise, I will use dragon fire to slowly burn you into ashes. Believe me, my fire control abilities are very strong." Fafnir took a deep breath, her eyes met the red dragon's indifferent vertical pupils, with the alluring gaze in her eyes suddenly rippling with two ethereal glows like snake spirits, which, upon meeting the red dragon's gaze, imprinted into the red dragon's mind. The red dragon slightly stiffened as he felt the snake spirit intrude into his sea of spirit, morphing into a sea demon with serpent hair, immensely powerful spirit even completely suppressing Karon's will, leaving him unable to move. The sea demon resembling Fafnir up 9/10 was walking the sea of spiritual, simultaneously opening her mouth and screeching, her intangible spiritual fluctuations spreading throughout the sea of spiritual, seeking the red dragon's soul presence. But this was the red dragon's domain. The consciousness above the sea of spiritual suddenly plummeted, flicking the power of mysterious runes hidden within the heart energy vortex. The fluctuating rune abruptly halted, causing the entire sea of spiritual swaves, along with the sea demon, to freeze. A chain extended from the rune, pulling a fragmented rune from the sea demon and swallowing it into the chain. Instantly, the chain displayed the same trace as the rune pulled from the sea demon, then vanished into the red dragon's river of blood. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 40-39, Bronze Certificate. Chapter 40, Chapter 39, Bronze Certificate. The red dragon's stiff body relaxed, its mouth curled slightly, revealing a gruesome set of fangs. Now this ogre giant demon, as she claimed herself, had truly become the red dragon's slave. The description of binding herself in a cocoon was perfect for the demon's actions. Karon hadn't anticipated that the ogre giant demon would possess such powerful bloodline power. Today's events served as a reminder, never view others through stereotypes. The red dragon shook its head, feeling somewhat heavy. After devouring a part of the opponent's soul, it now felt mentally burdened, like a person who has overeaten, with thoughts slowing down. The retaliating demon lay on the ground twitching, clearly suffering considerable damage from the soul's counteraction. Her bare toes were taut, nostrils flaring rapidly, and even her body was rigidly stiff. The red dragon paid no attention. Although uninjured, the malicious demon truly enraged him. Even if the demon Fafnir had become quite useful to him, the red dragon still maliciously declared, "Fafnir, I won't kill you now, but because of your actions, all ogres will become the lowest slaves, including you." Flames flickered between the red dragon's nostrils as he grinned, displaying those gruesome fangs at the progressively calming demon and remarked, even future dragon group beloveds will become masters you ogres cannot defy. Remember, all ogres. Is it really so amusing to play king in the wilderness, beautiful red dragon? A voice drifted from afar, yet sounded as clear as if spoken nearby. Will Clarence stood with a smile at the front, accompanied by a grinning squinting mage, stationed on a low hill behind the ogre camp. Elite warriors from his family subtly spread out behind him, their exquisitely crafted weapons glimmers threateningly under the sunset. Mages lingered at the back, staying with juvenile dragons that earth dragons and bear goblins held. Their eyes keenly fixed on the camp below, where the stunning red dragon, despite having a wing snapped, captured all the mages' attention. Karon's perception warned him that the group of people not far in front posed a possibly lethal threat. His dispersed perception faintly sensed several potent forces fixating on him, among them was the smiling human, but the most dangerous was the squinting mage standing beside him. He had a strong intuition that any threatening move he made would evoke deadly retaliation, and beyond these hindrances, the warriors following the human leader bore powers similar to the blood-colored gleam on Moergo the ogre's horn, though far from the ogre tyrant's strength, all carrying extraordinary power. In the Icaria world, only through arduous persistence or possessing strong talent could one gather one's own seed of power and enter the extraordinary tier. The stages above extraordinary tier 1 to tier 5 are considered low tier, tier 6 to tier 10 middle tier, tier 11 to tier 15 high tier, while 16 or above transcends into the holy sanctuary, a phase known as hero among some races. Karon understood humans well, having once been human himself, knowing perhaps human individual strength struggled against giant dragons, but humanity's greatest strength lies in their average level. Their unmatched creativity and collective power are unparalleled by other races. And those mages, the magic power surging in each mage's body was incredibly abundant, and their hands' magic staff emitted a lively magic light, locking onto the red dragon. Perhaps once the red dragon showed any intent of fleeing, endless magic assaults would ensue. Blindly ascending under enemy targeting is exceedingly foolish. As for his centaur followers, only the most formidable Kali neared the extraordinary's edge. Perhaps just a round of charge from the warriors opposite would leave all these centaurs on this land. Of course, crucial in the red dragon's eyes is that Gomot and Axi were rescued with great effort, and cannot be lightly abandoned. Without thinking, the red dragon turned, whispered to those like Kali and Zogo guarding before him, "Go, take Gomot and Axi far away, do not appear without my exact signal." Kali gazed deeply at the giant dragon. By now the centaurs had become a burden to the giant dragon. She knelt lowly saying, "Following your will, Lord Karon, the centaurs will await your return." Will Clarence paid no heed to the centaurs' actions. Dispatching warriors to intercept centaurs might offer the red dragon an opportunity to escape from his grasp. He murmured to the squinting mage beside him, "Zias." The squinting mage Zias opened his eyes, revealing a gleam, lightly waved his magic staff, silent spells condensed magic power flowing into Will Clarence from above, a faint small array subtly appeared beneath his feet. Will Clarence's aura intensified instantly, height increasing slightly, the seed of power in him exploded with an extremely fierce bronze flame enveloping him, representing the power of the bronze certificate, one of humanity's most orthodox ancient cultivation techniques emulating those bronze seeds created by ancient gods. The bronze flame around Will seemed to resonate with similar power, a slight bronze flame emerging on the dozens of warriors behind him, flowing indefinitely towards Will. His aura instantly ascended, shooting from tier 11 to tier 14, faintly touching the tier 15 threshold, his limit. Will savored the powerful force rampaging in him, somewhat clumsily manipulated the body to briefly rise, step by step on air towards the battle-ready red dragon. He knew dragons valued strength, thus wanted from the front to defeat the red dragon with absolute power, aiming to subdue Karon. Dragons are innately extraordinary beings, born able to battle a robust adult. Gauging a dragon's strength by typical tiers is inaccurate, measured by economic stages of true dragons. It's the difference in life's essence and strength's depth, often making mid-tier extraordinary warriors extra cautious against juvenile dragons, as their strength vastly pales against a juvenile dragon's, though they wield more nimble stature and adept martial arts for maneuvering against ordinary juvenile dragons, negligence meant death. The red dragon still in the juvenile stage is stronger than peers of age. Even the high-tier extraordinary will needed mage Zias to enrich himself with life growth and magic control reflection spells ensuring absolute supremacy, content being a mage's spell experiment, will relishes it. Will Clarence, like an elegant noble, landed gently before the red dragon, unprecedented power imbued him with confidence. He locked eyes with the dragon's icy vertical pupils saying, "Come with me, juvenile dragon. Your exceptional talent shouldn't fade away in this wilderness, sunk in the illusory and barren strength. Explore the world, changing day and night, humanity risen to be sovereigns, even mighty dragons merely edge-of-world survivors, due to dragons' ancient heritage fixated on stagnation." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 41-40, Attempt. Chapter 41, Chapter 40, Attempt. In fact, Karon thought there might be a tiny bit of truth to what the other party said, but not much. These weren't a problem for him at all, as his strength wasn't solely reliant on the giant dragon's heritage and bloodline, but rather came from other sources. But how could he possibly reveal this secret to the other party, and the notion that the opponent thought verbally persuading him would succeed was laughable. Karon sneered, lifting his head high and snorting a few words through his nostrils, "Are you nuts?" Will Clarence's smiling face froze for a moment, and then resurfaced with a kind of noble elegant yet hypocritical smile. In situations where they perceive themselves as having the upper hand, most human nobility enjoy maintaining their superior posture. Will Clarence endeavored to win the goodwill of the red dragon, even though he hadn't seen the embryonic form of the red dragon's domain with his own eyes. Merely observing the red dragon's posture was worth his effort. If he could truly gain the red dragon's sincere submission, he would even consider letting go of all the juvenile dragons captured, including the blue dragon Carlet, as their combined value could not match that of the red dragon. Regardless of how hard one tries, no matter how great the talent, the path to legend is 1 in 10,000. Talented giant dragons will reach the holy sanctuary upon adulthood, and only those with exceptionally remarkable talent will step into legend. Even among giant dragons, only the highly talented pure-blood members of the Golden Dragon can achieve legendary status post-adulthood, but this does not mean that the life tier of Golden Dragons surpasses legend. It's a threshold that only extraordinarily talented Golden Dragons can cross. This red dragon holds the embryonic form of a domain, and as long as it doesn't die prematurely, it's destined to grow into legend over time, and possibly assume a domain posture above legend. Will carefully contained the surging power of the bronze certificate within him, pointing to the magical luminescence flowing beneath the bronze flame on his body, and spoke with alluring persuasion, "Do you know this is merely Hugh's experimental magic? It allows me temporary life growth, enduring stronger power, but if used on you, juvenile dragon, if you have sufficient magic power to sustain it, this spell can accelerate your bloodline growth. And the magic array beneath my feet is a control system feedback magic. It allows me to reflect all your actions like a mirror within my mind, giving you the upper hand in battles, ensuring victory." Will Clarence eloquently painted a bright future for the red dragon. "As long as you sincerely sign a contract with me, I will use the strength of my entire family to aid your growth, and all these magic can be learned by you. The soul of a giant dragon is difficult to enslave. You can kill a dragon, just like the adventurers and dragon hunting teams in the Icaria world do. But if you wish to enslave a dragon's soul, although the main plane consciousness of Icaria world rejects the coming of true gods, the consciousness of the evil dragon god Tiamat might secretly descend to burn you to ashes. Thus, many dragons are voluntarily bound by a magic contract or a true god contract, with methods too numerous to count. Not only these things, but countless knowledge, including knowledge on how to step into legend, I will also do my utmost to gather for you. You won't be like those dragons restricted by their bloodline growth, you will have your clear path, and together we will ascend to the pinnacle of Icaria." The human noble was diligently painting a grand picture, though he didn't possess this capability currently, he merely needed the red dragon to believe he had it. Once the red dragon submitted, his words would have a fulcrum of power, making his claims no longer empty. Needless to say, Will's words were quite tempting to Karon, but actually, for the red dragon, his method was entirely wrong. Giant dragons are inherently lazy, not every giant dragon has a penchant for magic. Accepting inherited knowledge during sleep was alright, but asking a dragon to learn magic is less effective than offering them a sufficient weight of gold for temptation. Perhaps this is one of the reasons the true dragon race is gradually declining. With Karon's character, he merely grinned, revealing menacing fangs, raised his intact dragon claw slowly to his chest, and spoke in a deep voice, "Then, show me the power of knowledge." Before the words were finished, the red dragon's body had already entered a state of mental overclocking, with his perception intensely focused, firmly locking onto the man with shining golden hair a few steps away. Deep within Karon's body, the evil dragon blood surged through his veins. Amidst the fresh crimson gold scale armor, emerged wisps of white mist and the scorching aura of flowing magma. Boundless rage and a desire for destruction flooded his mind. A thread of fire between Karon's chest and abdomen lit up. Brutal and destructive sky-blue dragon fire transformed into a column of flame roaring out from the impassable mouth of the giant dragon. The loud sound of breaking wind exploded in everyone's ears. Whoosh! Will Clarence could only manage to lower the cross badge pinned to his chest into a falling longsword, gripping the sword with both hands as it plunged into the earth before him with great force. The originally steady bronze flame infused the longsword, under the blessing of the magic weapon, surged instantly. Like an overwhelming fire tide, the bronze flame rose fiercely, the leaping tongues of fire clashing against the sky-blue dragon fire with a thunderous boom. The clashing force solidified for a moment, as if the world had gone silent, then the sound accompanied by surging air waves spread from the collision's fulcrum. Grey stones and dust on the ground were swept and scattered by the air waves, and Will Clarence's golden hair was blown backward by the clash's power. Dense dust rolled, the collision sound of power blaring in everyone's ears, the hum not even dissipating before a pair of crimson eyes suddenly lit up in the thick smoke, filled with endless malice and destruction, like a dragon demon emerging from hellfire. The sharp dragon claws of the dragon demon, flickering with dazzling cold light in the smoke and fire, crashed out of the dust, tearing through the air with a shriek, aimed at Will Clarence. With the power of the giant dragon and the sharpness of its claws, this strike could tear through solid rock and pierce armor, let alone a warrior's flesh. But at this critical moment, Will Clarence bent over backwards ghost-like, and with the momentum swung out his long sword. Ding ding ding! A few crisp sounds came from the sword as it touched the dragon claws several times in an instant, neutralizing the deadly assault of the giant dragon. Will hadn't even caught his breath when the red dragon suddenly twisted around after its claw attempt, its long tail whistling forth like a heavy hammer in a siege, while the high temperature and feverish heat of the fire prison descended, obscuring vision with steaming heat waves and rushing dust. Boom! The red dragon's tail struck Will's weapon. Will's feet did not move an inch, and the bronze flame surging through his body turned into a round shield, enclosing him firmly against the effects of the fire prison. Although the red dragon's fire prison continuously eroded his power, it couldn't break through his defense for the moment. Yet a trace of anger rose in his heart. He wasn't one of those ragtag ogre mages, he now gathered the strength of many, which should have been much stronger than the juvenile dragon ahead, yet after the juvenile dragon's first move, he was consistently suppressed, even if he could foresee the red dragon's attack intentions. Damn! Will swallowed his saliva, about to muster all his strength to hit the red dragon hard, but found himself suddenly unable to sense the red dragon's actions. He hurriedly activated his whole body's flame to disperse the dust before him, only to see that devil dragon from hell had already withdrawn its power, turned around, and winged straight toward the high sky by the sea. Karon slipped away, realizing he couldn't defeat the opponent before him. Even without the opponent's magic reflection, he found it hard to defeat them in a short time. If he's not careful, he might suffer a huge loss, for the opponent is a high-tier extraordinary warrior, and although his current scales have much stronger defense than the beast hide of those ferocious beasts, they still can't withstand the opponent's attacks. High-tier extraordinary warriors can easily break through the defense of a juvenile red dragon. If it weren't for Karon's exceptional capabilities, a group of well-equipped low-tier extraordinary adventurers would have been able to surround and overthrow a juvenile red dragon. Moreover, there are still many high-level mages eyeing around, and many extraordinary warriors with superb martial skills. The juvenile red dragon is not enough to defeat the teamwork of these groups of high-tier mages and extraordinary samurai. Thus, taking advantage of the relaxation of mental locking by others during the clash, and using the cover of dust and air waves, he fled to the seaside, seizing the opportunity to strike first, and if unsuccessful, directly fleeing. He wondered if he could burn these humans' ships while escaping, so without enough transport tools, those juvenile dragons would temporarily be left here, and he could later think of a way to see if he could rescue them. But just as the red dragon took off, a blood arrow and several icy magic power arrows accompanied by a sharp howl came flying. The red dragon, in a state of mental overclocking, nimbly dodged the blood arrow and other crystal magic power arrows. The magic of these high-tier mages was evaded by the red dragon at the critical moment. In this state, the red dragon possessed far greater agility than ordinary giant dragons. Karon took off, but behind him came the cold words of human nobility. "Red dragon, if you run away, these juvenile dragons will die at my hands." The human noble's expression was cold and arrogant, using unscrupulous means to achieve his ends. Karon's heart trembled, and his strong wings slowed down unwittingly. He dared not bet on whether the human nobility's words were true. Even after years together, although his heart was cold, he still harbored short-term inseparable emotions for these partners who grew up with him. The selfishness inherent in the red dragon bloodline conflicted with human gentleness, clouding his senses. In this instant, several high-tier mages simultaneously acted, the air suddenly converging with a large amount of magic power transforming into magic falling on the red dragon. A ring of fire, emitting magical fluctuations that escaped the red dragon's close inspection, subtly settled upon Karon, with a boom, exploded. Though nearly immune to fire elements, the red dragon was not affected by elemental damage, but the explosive wave fractured the red dragon's most vulnerable wing bones. Other high-tier mages' spells also struck the red dragon's body. Fortunately, not every mage possesses the skill and ability to silently cast advanced magic, but these high-tier mage spells still affected the red dragon's body, causing it to lose balance in the air and accelerate its fall. The red dragon plunged from the sky, crashing into the dust. Karon's mind flashed with the image of the squinting mage before his fall, the ring of blazing flame, this bastard, who taught him to unleash advanced magic right away. Will Clarence coldly looked at the red dragon whose wings had been broken, and at the distant two-headed ogre. Sahai, with a smug and delightful face, said lightly to the samurai following behind him, "Go, kill these meddling ogres, they no longer have the value for trading and support." He looked at the ogres indifferently, as if looking at chickens and dogs. Yet at this moment, a vague and unformed thought vaguely flashed through his mind, chilling his spine. He, Will Clarence, seemed not supposed to be here at all. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 42-41, White King's Twins. Chapter 42, Chapter 41, White King's Twins. Silent and dark, the sound of waves, the world shaking. Karon slowly opened his weary eyes, smelling the clear salty scent of the sea, and was met with the faintly glowing eyes of the giant dragons in the darkness. "Karon! Karon, you're finally awake. Karon, how are you? Are you feeling okay?" The delighted voices of the juvenile dragons reached his ears, somewhat resembling a buzzing sound after ear ringing. His head felt a bit dizzy, but he could still make out their words. Red Dragon let out a deep breath and replied slowly, "Don't worry, I'm fine now. Karon, Carlette betrayed us, she betrayed the dragon group." The young female dragon Kleena squeezed forward with difficulty, her words filled with anger and a sense of grievance towards Red Dragon. I know, Gomot told me about it. Karon turned his head to look around. The once spacious cabin had been emptied to make room for the giant dragons. Red Dragon Kleena, Black Dragon Rosani, Blue Dragon Das, White Dragon Kamid, Green Dragon Antagena were all here, while Blue Dragon Carlet was coiled alone in a distant corner, her head buried under her broad wings, silent and motionless. Karon let out a sigh of relief. Not seeing the presence of White Dragon Gomot and Blue Dragon Axi was a piece of good news. Karon, what should we do now? White Dragon Kamid, who had the most faith in Red Dragon's abilities, looked at Karon expectantly. He believed Red Dragon could come up with ideas, unlike himself, who only knew how to follow others. Blue Dragon Das sighed, a bit frustrated. Even Karon got caught, what can he possibly do? Are we supposed to rely on Gomot and Axi to rescue us? Even Karon couldn't manage that. Antagena lay dispirited in the corner. These juvenile dragons saw White Dragon and Blue Dragon being taken away by the Centaur tribe's warriors, but they didn't trust Gomot and Axi's abilities. She felt their dragon lives were bleak and without hope. Perhaps we will be sold as merchandise by these humans, exchanged for piles of gold coins. Karon might even be bought back by the Highland dwarves to be tied up as a fire-breathing stove. Black Dragon Rosani shrugged, in high spirits, though his mood was downcast, he still attempted a not-so-funny joke on Red Dragon. Karon silently watched these juvenile dragons. His determination allowed him to calmly accept whatever happened, whether the outcome was good or bad, but these juveniles could not. He could feel their inner confusion and helplessness. For now, he needed to give these juveniles some encouragement and courage. The pupils of Red Dragon glimmered in the darkness of the cabin, not caring if Carlet heard his words. He said solemnly, "For now, we must endure patiently, like beasts lying in the wilderness." And I, Red Dragon's face was exceptionally determined as he stated, "will do my best to bring all of you back to the land of our birth. We will eventually return to this land, this is my promise." The former ogre camp had been burned down, leaving a thin layer of ash on the blackened ground. Countless ogre bodies, slain under the centaur's hooves, were gathered together, forming a small hill. Some ogres who didn't escape in time died in the battle between Red Dragon and Will Clarence, while others perished in the massacre by the warlords of the Clarence clan. The hot weather had already started rotting these corpses, emitting a foul stench, with countless flies and insects buzzing over them. Ogre giantess Fafnir brought the surviving ogres who had fled into the forest back, hauling the deceased bodies, then sprinkled them with a resin from the forest that easily ignited. These ogres would be burned and turned into nutrients for the land, contributing in death to the earth on which they grew. Groups of centaur warriors patrolled the camp, armed with sharp weapons and long, thick vine whips confiscated from the camp, and also supervised the ogres' work. If any ogre attempted to slack off, they would be whipped immediately. Even giant demon Fafnir was not spared. These centaur warriors had no sympathy, as Karon proclaimed, these ogres had become the slaves of the centaur tribe. The leader of the centaur tribe, Kali, and her mate Zogo stood at the mouth of the gulf, accompanied by the powerful female warriors, Oni and Sunaya. All the centaurs gazed at the figures ahead. White Dragon Gomot and Blue Dragon Axi sat atop a large rock at the harbor, the evening sea breeze across the tranquil gulf unusually cold, yet Blue Dragon's heart felt even frostier. The endless sea showed no trace of human ships, and Blue Dragon Axi's face was filled with bewilderment. Oxid turned his head, his confused heart instinctively seeking some comfort. Perhaps White Dragon felt the same, not knowing where to head next. Yet Gomot appeared exceptionally relaxed, White Dragon flicking his tail as he gazed at the setting sun on the sea, seeming to understand why Karon enjoyed watching the sunset on the evening plains. Blue Dragon Axi noticed White Dragon's tail. Despite the wound of the severed tail having healed, there was no sign of regrowth, which was unusual for a dragon's powerful regenerative abilities, even if only a few days had passed. Oxy questioned, "Gomot, what's with your tail? is it under some curse? You can tell me, maybe I can help find a solution. White Dragon shook his head, stopping his tail's motion. Oxy, you need not worry about me. There's nothing wrong with my tail, it's my choice not to let it regrow. Why? Blue Dragon was bewildered. A dragon's tail is a potent weapon and sometimes essential for maintaining balance during flight. As long as Karon and the dragon group have not returned to this land, I shall remain Gomot of the severed tail. White Dragon stated, in the past, I was timid and cowardly, hiding behind Karon, blending into the dragon group, but now I must step forward, the group needs my strength, Karon needs my help. At this moment, at the tail end of the young dragon's age, Axie appeared immature compared to the juvenile dragons. Perhaps the saying holds true, those who mature early sometimes mature later, and those who mature late often become more mature. Gomot turned to Blue Dragon. Oxy, you'll help me, won't you? Just like Karon always helped us. The confusion vanished from Blue Dragon's face, and he feigned a relaxed tone, although Karon has beaten me before, but who can deny I am part of the dragon group? White Dragon stood up, his gradually growing wings suddenly spreading open. He turned around, his crystalline white vertical pupils fixed on the centaur, asking calmly, and you, centaurs, Kali? The centaurs beat their chests with their hands, bowing their heads, their eyes filled with resolve. We will await the return of our Lord Karon. Until then, your will is the will of the centaurs, Lord Gomot. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 43-1, The Special White Dragon. Chapter 43, Chapter 1, The Special White Dragon. No one knows how many days have passed. Karon has long lost the concept of precise time, a habit formed since his birth. Dragons have no real perception of time, it's useless to them. These dragons were shackled with specially prepared chains, their limbs bound. They were provided with just enough food every day to keep them alive and vibrant. Even the meager portions of food were heavily mixed with magic potions by the mages to suppress the dragon's magic power bloodline to prevent outbreaks on the ship. As a result, not only was the space for dragon movement extremely limited, but their bodies also felt weak during activity, forcing them to curl up. Their heads nestled into their wings, resembling large cats sleeping together. Karon squinted his eyes for rest, his head tucked beneath his folded wings. Next to the resting Karon was the mischievous white dragon Kamid. Mumbling something unclear in his sleep, he kept sucking on the tips of his own white wings as if dreaming of eating something delicious. The red dragon sighed helplessly and immersed his consciousness into the heart energy vortex. Complex or pure strands of the power of thought were absorbed by the runes, which then emitted rare, barely perceptible heart energy to blend into the vortex. Karon discovered that at some unknown time, the power of thought connecting to White Dragon Gomot had become particularly solid, with the most individual power of thought absorbed from Gomot. Next there were Kamid and Kleena. These two dragons were extremely trusting of Karon, especially Kamid, who invested his limited wisdom in Karon, as if from Kamid's perspective, the red dragon had become his external brain. Then came the other juvenile dragons and the centaur tribe, who provided similar amounts of the power of thought to Karon. Juvenile dragons provided slightly more, but it was surprising to see the power of thought from the centaur tribe steadily increasing. Finally, there were the Dogman's beloved, although in large numbers, each one offered very little individual power of thought, likely due to the weak individual strength of kobolds. Lastly, it was the ogre giant demon. This soul-devouring giant demon, now counteracted by Karon, also established a weak connection with him, along with some power of thought from ogres. It seemed the actions of the red dragon left a profound impression and shadow on these ogres. Click click click. The sound of leather soles touching the ship's deck approached, suggesting the footsteps of Will Clarence. These days, this human noble constantly sought opportunities to persuade Karon to sign a contract, coming almost daily. Karon didn't want to respond to him. If possible, the red dragon would crush each bone of this human finely, then discard them on the plains for the wild dogs to savor bit by bit. Better not let me find a chance, the red dragon thought sinisterly. Contrary to Karon's expectations, it wasn't Will Clarence who came but the smiling mage Zaius. Squinting eyes? Karon was even less inclined to engage. The mage gently squatted before the unmoving red dragon, patting the dragon's wing covered in dense red scales, smilingly said, "Hey, juvenile dragon, want to hear a story? A story about dragons? I'm not interested, don't play such childish games in front of me, mage, I'm not one of those kids who enjoy listening to stories." The red dragon mumbled. Zaius didn't take the red dragon's reaction to heart, smilingly continuing to tell the story. Long ago, in the far north's glacier plain, there was a white dragon who believed most dragons only instinctively used their power, like a pig with strength. Switching a pig's consciousness with a dragon's wouldn't make much difference. To escape this predicament, this white dragon embarked on the path of seeking knowledge. He first found a low-tier mage, establishing a contract, agreeing to protect his family for a generation in exchange for a portion of the mage's inheritance after his death. Karon's ears hidden beneath his wings quietly perked up. Anyway, to kill time, listening to this mage's story for amusement seemed fine. The mage suddenly paused, smiled slightly, and continued, "This white dragon was very trustworthy. After guarding the mage's family for a whole 100 years, he received the mage's sincere trust, thus obtaining knowledge on how to touch a real corner of this world. After completing the first contract, the white dragon found a middle-tier mage, similarly establishing a contract, guarding the mage's family, receiving a portion of the mage's inheritance. Thus, under the white dragon's good reputation, eventually, a legendary mage nearing the end of life sought him to sign a contract. The legendary mage left the white dragon knowledge about the essence of power. All extraordinary creatures in the world have their seed of power. The dragon's seed of power is their evil dragon bloodline. Within a few hundred years, utilizing this knowledge, the white dragon transcended the legendary threshold in terms of life's essence. Essence transcending the legendary threshold? In Karon's inherent knowledge, there wasn't information about this white dragon, yet he knew that the true dragon race's power far exceeded other defined tiers of power. Looking at this from an extraordinary tier system, typical dragons surpass power definitions by 2 tiers. However, a white dragon from the 5-colored dragon species, whose bloodline is already at the lowest, generally requires reaching ancient dragon or ancient dragon status to achieve legendary power, i.e., at least 1,000-year-old white dragon possessing power to rival legends. Even then, white dragon's bloodline often doesn't support them crossing into the legendary. Yet, this white dragon, in mere centuries, lifted the life essence beyond the legendary, stronger and more dangerous than those ancient dragons, almost like a fairy tale. Karon's interest was piqued. He extended his head from beneath his wings, intending to hear what next words this mage might say. Zaius' tone gradually intensified. This white dragon even, after stepping into the star realm, killed a legendary tier titan, known as Breath of Winter. He wielded a destructive breath capable of bringing winter to all life. And the legendary mage who created all this was part of a lineage of mages of which I'm one, and we call ourselves research mages. The air gradually turned stagnant, and after a long while, seeing the red dragon seemingly in a daze, the mage couldn't help but wave his hand in front of the dragon. "Say something, juvenile dragon." "What should I say?" Karon was taken aback, thoughts still lingering on the mage's previous words, the real side of the world. The extreme perception trigger he experienced likely showed a real aspect of the world as well. Squinting mage Zaius' eyes widened, apparently a bit frenzied. "Juvenile dragon, your talent far surpasses that white dragon's. You shouldn't be like those dragons, indulging in your own bloodline. Join me, I'll assist you, you can help me, together, our future is boundless." The red dragon boredly swung his tail, saying nothing. This sweet promise was not only grand but gritty. A dragon's affair is a dragon's affair. Karon is Karon, what does it matter to a so-and-so? Besides, the situation isn't clear yet, so it's better to observe and adapt rather than making rash choices. The dragon's silence indicated a certain attitude. The mage squinted his eyes again, stood up, and deeply gazed at the red dragon. Your eyes harbor a true dragon, juvenile dragon. If you change your mind, I'll assist you. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 44-2, Hobbies. Chapter 44, Chapter 2, Hobbies. Karon had to admit, some of the things the mage said did make sense. From his perspective, the secrets in his mind were equivalent to a power amplifier. The more knowledge he possessed, the stronger his foundation became, and the more feedback he would receive. Using it as a mindless powerful tool would be a great waste. It should be a ladder for one's transcendence, and not merely a stepping stone on the path to becoming strong. Perhaps the direction of his future enhancement should shift slightly in this direction. The red dragon slowly closed his eyes, gradually gathering his strength. In times of adversity, it was an opportunity for cultivation, using the thorns along the road to hone his willpower. The days of sailing at sea were extremely tedious and dull, especially since the juvenile dragons were confined in the ship's hold, unable to move freely. They could only hear the sound of the sea each day, and their spirits were quite weary. The daily feeding time became their most active moment, although the food was scarce, merely enough to maintain the daily physiological needs of the giant dragons. Fortunately, giant dragons are inherently extraordinary creatures. Their bodies, unlike ordinary beasts, do not require daily excretion. The stomachs of the giant dragons could digest almost all foods, but some leftover food remnants that were useless to the dragon's body would remain. And the giant dragon could condense those remaining useless food remnants in the stomach and discharge them when necessary. Otherwise, the entire hold would have already stunk. However, with so little food, not much food residue was left for the giant dragons. Only the excess magic potion slowly precipitated into crystals in the dragon's stomach. The bodies of the juvenile dragons were restrained, and these harmful substances couldn't be discharged for the time being. To minimize their impact on the body, they had to make such a choice. Will Clarence, the noble, would descend from the airship daily, trying to persuade the red dragon, but the red dragon ignored him. The days passed like this, and when the juvenile dragons had already grown accustomed to falling asleep amidst the waves, the ship finally docked. The juvenile dragons didn't know where they had arrived, only that after the ship harbored, they were once again shoved into large iron cages covered with black cloth in the dead of night. Each cage was pulled by 6 tall, robust gelded horses with mixed alien blood, heading into an unknown world under the cover of night. Karon didn't intend to reveal his perception ability, but his keen ears noticed the number of accompanying people increased significantly. The heavy sound of hooves signaled heavily armed knights, possibly fully armored heavy cavalry. He counted about 100 knights. There were also quite a few foot soldiers. Their steps were not light, and they moved without much conversation, clearly a well-armed escort unit sent meticulously. Such a number of knights and soldiers might mean the elite warriors of the Clarence clan were all dispatched. This procession moved quite slowly, with light cavalry coming and going frequently, indicating that Will was being extremely cautious, continually sending out light cavalry to scout the situation. Only during the dead of night would the black cloth over the dragons' heads be lifted slightly for them to breathe and eat. This would always cause some commotion and shock in the otherwise orderly troop. Even the knights raised by the Clarence clan from a young age didn't know what they were guarding this time, as even these loyal knights hadn't received any information. They could only watch, eyes wide with awe, the particularly quiet juvenile dragons inside the cages for half the night. In most people's minds, dragons had already become legends. This world was no longer the ancient, wild era ruled by giant dragons, titan giants, and other mythical creatures. The powerful dynasties established by the ancient Beastman Empire, Elf Kingdom, and Dwarf Kingdom had also gradually withdrawn from the world's stage. Now it was the era of human dominion over the land. They even wanted to conquer the sky and the sea after developing an extremely prosperous magical culture. The giant ships sailing on the ocean and the airships soaring in the sky were testament to this, with some mad mages even proposing to build mage towers flying in the sky and citadel cities floating on the clouds. Those declining races and powerful beings are now scattered in the wilds of the Icaria world. The powerful five-colored giant dragons and metal dragons rarely appeared in the human view, and only in the remote southern empire were there said to be good dragons who had even been granted titles in the human empire. Even so, many five-color dragons were still slaughtered by the greedy and omnipresent treasure hunters and dragon hunters teaming up. Today, only in remote, sparsely populated wilderness marshes and deep mountain forests could information about those five-colored giant dragons be found. No particularly high-profile five-color dragons appeared anymore. Even adult dragons only dared to appear in sparsely populated frontier towns. Only evil dragons who could grow to their prime when their forces often equated to that of a monster kingdom could brazenly roam the continent. By that time, only a kingdom or even an empire of equivalent power could muster the strength to subjugate an evil dragon, but those who could grow to such a stage were exceedingly rare. After staying in the black cloth-draped cage for a few days, the cloth was finally removed, although the convoy was still traveling. It was noticeably more relaxed. Wide enough to accommodate 16 carriages side by side, the stone-paved avenue began to show many passing merchants and travelers. Merchants were shouting at their beastmen slaves who drove their carts, as earth dragons slowly pulled the vehicles down the road. Some particularly influential merchants even had centaur slave guards and elf slave guards. These slaves wore leather armor and were allowed to hold bows and arrows and weapons, guarding the merchants' carriages. On the vast fields by the roadside, many farmers stood by, and it was rare to see black-skinned minotaur slaves working in the fields. The overseers sat by with whips in hand, leisurely drinking and chatting. Someone exclaimed, "Dragon! My God, it's a dragon! Look, there's a fierce red dragon and many juvenile dragons." The exclamations echoed one after another, quickly spreading along the entire road and the fields, causing a sensation here. The wide road suddenly became congested and stagnant. Many travelers halted their convoy just to take a look at the legendary dragons, while farmers from the fields also stopped to glance this way. The slaves of different races, upon seeing the dragons, had eyes not only filled with curiosity and confusion but also some gloom. Had even powerful dragons become commodities? Thankfully, the escorting knights were fully armed, with sharp long spears glinting coldly, pushing back the crowd surging onto the road. The city guards arrived from afar to disperse the people, allowing the convoy to proceed, though the noisy clamoring continued ceaselessly. Karon discreetly peeked out from under his wing, looking towards the tall and solid city that rose steeply from the plains by the mountains. Neatly piled giant stones, city walls towering dozens of meters high, and several wide and grand city gates were opened. On the heavy gates were carvings of hundreds of beast and scroll patterns. Soldiers in full iron armor, leaning on long spears, guarded the passage, their greedy eyes trailing every passer-by through the city gates. This was the political and economic center of the Gata Empire's power, the capital where the emperor of the Gata Empire resided, Hobbies. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 45-3, The Optimist. Chapter 45, Chapter 3, The Optimist. In a transfer that could be described as tortuous, the juvenile dragons temporarily found the long-lost freedom. The red dragon and the juvenile dragons were released from their cages and allowed to roam freely in a garden. The garden, although lush with flowers and plants, had little to no guards. Even those who occasionally came to feed the juvenile dragons were seemingly weak humans who didn't even wear armor or carry weapons. If it were in the past, the impulsive Kleena would probably have already incited Karon and the other juvenile dragons to charge out, and the rest of the juvenile dragons would happily follow suit. But these juvenile dragons only gathered quietly like Karon, silently observing everyone who passed by. Life is a process of gaining wisdom through experience, and maturity through trials. And what was the price? Their freedom. This is the imperial palace of the Gata Empire, perhaps safer than most places in the world, but for the juvenile dragons, it is more dangerous than most places in the world. From the occasional words outside the garden, Karon roughly learned that the national birthday of the Gata Empire was approaching. Unlike the decision of the merchant Orsis, these juvenile dragons were presented to the emperor by the astute Viscount Will Clarence as a gift of celebration, meant to display the empire's military power and martial spirit on the day of the birthday celebration. Karon lay in the center of the dragon group. His warm body seemed to give the juvenile dragons a sense of fearlessness. The red dragon sometimes glanced over the gradually calming faces of these juvenile dragons, sensing the deeply buried dragon fire within their hearts, which would erupt more fiercely the deeper it was suppressed. Sometimes the red dragon wondered what would happen if he prayed to the evil dragon god Tiamat or the good dragon god Bahamut, but the thought of the evil dragons who died by the hands of the dragon slayers made it seem pointless. In an era where true gods do not appear, dragons have to rely on themselves. It's no wonder that Carlet and Axie never showed any prayer or reverence to the evil dragon god Tiamat before. Karon's irreverence is innate. These evil dragons don't believe in gods, and that reveals something. Uncle Care, are those terrifying giant dragons inside? An eager child's voice came from the high walls, tender and lively. Yes, but these giant dragons are just juvenile dragons, they only look scary. With me by your side, you need not worry, Princess Leia. A deep and rugged voice accompanied the opening of the heavy courtyard gate, and a tall middle-aged man entered, holding the hand of a blonde girl. The girl's big, curious eyes were tinged with a bit of fear. Her long golden hair was braided into two pigtails, swinging as she tilted her head to look at the juvenile dragons lazily lying on the ground. The tall man, clad in black iron armor and about 2 meters tall, bore a face filled with affection for the child, but he held no extra curiosity for the juvenile dragons, giving them only a fleeting glance before turning his gaze onto the child. Wow, these giant dragons look so beautiful, and they are so well behaved. The lively and cute Leia seemed eager, her round face breaking into a smile as she stood on her chubby toes. A pair of chubby little hands stretched tremblingly towards the quiet juvenile dragons. The red dragon and green dragon's splendorous scales deeply charmed the little girl, even more so than the gemstones her father gifted her. Do not be afraid, Princess Leia, these dragons, no matter how noble they once were, are now merely our spoils like those beastmen elves. No matter what you do, they dare not resist. Care looked at the few juvenile dragons with a gaze that was clearly threatening and warning. Yes. Giant dragons aren't scary, Leia is just scared. The girl mustered the courage to stretch out her hand to touch the scales of the red dragon. Karon shifted his body, leaving only his rear towards the girl. Uncle Care, this dragon doesn't want me to touch it, it seems they don't like me. Let's go. Leia's eyes glimmered with crystalline tears and seemed about to cry. Care nodded, lifted the noble princess, and stepped out of the garden. Thus, amidst calm and dull days, the birthday of the Gata Empire arrived. The bustle and hustle outside had nothing to do with the juvenile dragons until they were chained by fully armed samurai and brought to the imperial palace's great hall. Many nobility dressed in luxurious clothing were feasting and drinking, among them envoys from various duchies and kingdoms near the Gata Empire. Even from the far south, the human kingdom had sent envoys here to celebrate the birth of the Gata Empire. No matter what thoughts these noble envoys harbored in their hearts, their faces were beaming with smiles. After all, the supreme ruler of the empire, Emperor Carol Caesar II, was sitting on his imperial throne overlooking the subjects under his rule. Carol Caesar is a legend of the empire, and he is considered a legend, at least in the lands he rules, equivalent to a legend. Since his accession, he expanded the former Gata Duchy into what is now the expansive Gata Empire with 26 provinces, ambitiously waging strong military campaigns outward. Internally, he suppressed all noble lords under him, making it hard for once powerful noble lords to breathe, holding absolute power in the empire, possessing the supreme voice, and even the high and mighty mages had to submit under his rule. Every mage had to comply with his supreme authority. Those low-tier mages, seeking to take on a genuine apprentice, had to apply for registration with the empire's administrative departments. And as the ruled lands expanded, his own power progressed from a mid-tier extraordinary to the pinnacle of the holy sanctuary, and in his empire, his strength was sufficient to contend with a legend. Such a powerful emperor sitting high on the throne, watching the broad and giant dragons, showed no enthusiastic fluctuations in his eyes, yet a slight smile appeared on his face. He elevated his emotions, raising his right hand as a signal. "Behold, these are noble giant dragons, now they are my spoils. This is the most excellent gift presented to me by my loyal Viscount Will Clarence, now the Knight Order leader." Viscount Will Clarence stood up from the gathering, gracefully accepting congratulations from the surrounding nobles and saluting to the Emperor of the Empire. Karon watched coldly, sensing that the Emperor's gaze upon him was as if he was overlooking everything in his sea of spirit, seemingly omnipresent, but with a slightly unstable spirit. "Kneel, dragon, salute to the Emperor of the Empire." The armored warriors holding them kicked the giant dragon's forelimbs, continuously pulling the chains. Karon stepped forward slightly, extending his broad wings to mimic the nobility's hand-on-heart salute, and then loudly proclaimed, "Mighty human emperor, dragons are also noble intelligent beings. How can we be treated the same as those mindless savage beasts? I demand the right to conduct free and equal communication." Karon knew that human nobles always seek to maintain their so-called poise and demeanor when in a position of advantage, so he attempted to probe with noble-style communication. "Interesting," the Emperor's eyes sparkled with a hint of interest. No matter how perfect, noble, and powerful a dragon appeared to mortals, in the eyes of those high-up humans with power and strength, they were merely beasts with strength. Although in a dragon's view, they believed themselves to be nobler than any race in the world. Carol Caesar too, without a second thought, smiled faintly. "You wish for the right to conduct free and equal communication, indeed. Then, according to the Empire's protocols, captured prisoners can enter the Imperial's gladiatorial arena. As long as you and these juvenile dragons win 100 victories, I will grant you the rights of freedom and equality." The Emperor smiled and addressed a noble below him, "Rebus, I entrust this task to you, hoping you can deliver satisfactory results." This emperor not only maintained his demeanor but also tossed the dragons into the gladiatorial arena as beasts to fight, further demonstrating his majesty. In the Empire's gladiatorial arena, there never were battles of equaled strength. As long as there is a hype, they would arrange a kobold to fight against an ogre, needing neither strength nor luck to achieve 100 victories. Moreover, Karon deeply understood the human ways. In his place, one is never allowed to win the 100th battle. However, even so, Karon felt this attempt was successful. The pessimist stands undefeated, while the optimist has the potential for success. He believed that making an attempt was the prelude to success. As for those humiliations, dragons will not forget. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 46-4, Alien Species. Chapter 46, Chapter 4, Alien Species. The chains on Karon's body were replaced with a magical alchemical creation, a ring of magic. Not only could the ring of magic suppress magical power, but forcibly removing it would trigger an alarm and cause a powerful explosion. No matter how strong a creature is, the inside of its body is always relatively fragile. Stepping into the wide and long underground prison passage of the gladiatorial arena, Karon's first impression was the stench, unbearable stench. Here were prisoners from various races, now all turned into desperados in this gladiatorial arena. There were bear goblins, centaurs, jackal wolfmen, these weaker species, as well as beastmen elves, a once mighty race, and many strange creatures even Karon didn't recognize. But without exception, those who survived in this gladiatorial arena were the strongest warriors of their respective races. The weak had long since become corpses or remnants. These exceptionally powerful gladiators were allocated a separate stone chamber, while some of the weaker ones were squeezed together. But conflicts didn't arise among them, as merely surviving here consumed the vast majority of their energy. The arrival of the juvenile dragons did not surprise these gladiators, teetering between life and death had made them indifferent enough. The most curious movement was merely casting an extra glance when the juvenile dragons passed by the cells. Although the juvenile dragons hadn't yet grown, the strength of the giant dragon race was beyond doubt, so each dragon was assigned an individual cell. And Karon, the strongest juvenile dragon, his cell was at the end of this passage. There were 10 of the most spacious cells here, specially prepared for those extraordinarily large gladiators, but currently, only 3 cells were occupied by gladiators. Although the faces of these 3 gladiators were hidden in the shadows under the lights, Karon's excellent true dragon vision still allowed him to see their true forms, a wolfman, a vampire, and a centaur. These 3 gladiators from different species all had intense power fluctuations on them, even stronger than the power when Will Clarence gathered people. But the power on the centaur was noticeably obscure, the fluctuations of power were faint and indistinct. If not attentive, one might think he was just an ordinary warrior. They might have been captured powerful warriors due to a war defeat, Karon casually speculated as he stepped into the cell. Hey, even a dragon got caught. The vampire in the shadows emerged into the light, mocking, seems like that mother dragon Tiamat doesn't favor her creation, not even caring for her beloved red dragon. Karon didn't get angry, as he had no intention of worshipping Tiamat, and just lightly mocked, weren't your vampire ancestors once powerful demigods active in this world, how come they didn't favor your vampire species? The vampire shrugged indifferently, that immortal geezer died who knows where, maybe got killed by someone long ago. The wolfman's ancestors haven't shown up for centuries either, maybe those 2 old things died together. Karon's fine scales furrowed on his brow. The ancestors of both vampires and wolfmen were once active demigods in the Icaria world. Though there was deep-seated hatred between the 2 races, it was hard to believe that 2 powerful demigods perished together. Thinking further, nowadays even the 5-colored giant dragons were too lazy to pray to the evil dragon god Tiamat, and it's said that the metal dragon god Bahamut hadn't given any oracles for centuries. Those great demigod ancestors of various races were slowly disappearing. This always gave Karon a peculiar feeling. Karon shook his heavy head, the powerful soul power of the ogre giant demon constantly fed back to him, his soul recently always felt full, making his head feel particularly heavy. He didn't think further, without more clues, speculation was useless. His current immediate priority was thinking about what to do next. His heart energy vortex had accumulated enough energy during this time for the next experiment in enhancement, but currently, he didn't have a relatively safe place or enough time for enhancement. Perhaps he should gradually carry out minor enhancements, so he wouldn't have to spend a lot of time in slumber. Karon closed his eyes, ignoring the apparently talkative vampire species, focusing on clearing his mind. The night passed, and Karon woke from sleep. The attendants of the gladiatorial arena had already opened the small door forged from fine steel, carrying in a whole live cow bound for him. However, the attendants seemed somewhat jittery. Although they were warriors with powerful combat abilities, even with the giant dragon restrained by a ring of magic, its powerful physical body could easily kill them. But Karon didn't do so, it was pointless. He had observed when entering that this gladiatorial arena was heavily guarded, every lamp outside was embedded with a magic crystal stone, each stand was a node of a massive magic array. He wasn't yet confident enough to escape from here. Moreover, the arena was located near the city center, in the bustling area of the city. Any disturbance could easily attract the legion and mages of those guards. He only had one chance to try. If not for the vague magic arrays on the stone walls of these cells, he might still attempt a dragon's redemption. Karon shook his head, looking at the adjacent cell. Perhaps these 3 powerful alien species could also become his assistants. Nobody wanted to live forever in cells only illuminated by lamps, even those detained gladiators could be decent cannon fodder. "Hey, Red Dragon, how about sharing a bit of your food with me? I like fresh food." The wolfman clearly wasn't satisfied that his food was just 2 dead chickens. He walked to the fine steel bars, his tall body nearly 4 meters, his whole body covered in silver fur already matted, with many scars, looking like a forlorn wolf dog. "These humans really take me as a beast that likes to eat live creatures raw." Looking at the big-eyed yellow cow on the ground, Karon instinctively wanted to refuse the wolfman's request. But then he suddenly thought of something. He looked at the wolfman and said, "You want food? Okay, let's make a deal. Tell me, in a gladiatorial fight, what's the most important thing to secure victory?" "Of course, it's strength, tearing the enemy with raw strength, then ripping out the enemy's heart." The wolfman bared his fangs, his sharp claws emerged from his thick furry hands. Clearly, he was a power worshipper. "Forget it, Red Dragon, don't waste your food on this stinky dog, it's better to just throw it to the dogs." The vampire species, dissatisfied with the wolfman's statement, chimed in, "It's skill, the skillful attack and evasion techniques. You'll always encounter a stronger enemy than you. Without skills, you'll end up trampled underfoot like that stinky dog." The two species with deep-seated hatred fell into another squabble. It seemed their life trapped here hadn't completely worn away their tempers. "Wrong, it's control ability. Strong physical control capability is the foundation of becoming a strong person. Control ability is the key to victory. Even when injured, you can still exert powerful combat ability," the centaur warrior interjected. "Red Dragon, give that food to me, these two fools got it all wrong." "You're talking nonsense," the vampire species and the wolfman retorted in unison. He snorted. The centaur let out a meaningless snicker. "I'm stronger than you lot." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 47-5, Saving Private Karon. Chapter 47, Chapter 5, Saving Private Karon. Ultimately, none of the 3 alien species obtained food from Karon. Yet, combining the opinions of the 3 powerful alien species and his own circumstances, Karon formed his own ideas. Though he is now a juvenile dragon, his physical development far exceeds that of dragons his age, and he is comprehensive in his enhancements. Even the most talented golden dragon among the true dragon race can't beat him at this stage. His strength should be sufficient to handle battles in the gladiatorial arena for now. As for his bodily manipulation power, with mental overclocking, he can perfectly control his body and exert 100% of his strength. This is superior to many who specialize in mastering manipulation power. Although he was impacted by injuries in the previous 2 occasions, it was simply due to his unfamiliarity with the sensation. During the transition from hatchling to juvenile dragon, he was always in an advantageous position. Hunting never caused him any harm. However, as he gradually becomes accustomed to that sensation in the future, he will adapt slowly and won't let injuries affect his body's manipulation power. His current focus should temporarily be on his combat aspects. The more victories he achieves, the longer his developmental period can extend. Moreover, the giant dragon legacy largely consists of combat techniques against titan giants who are exceptionally massive in size. These are time-honored family heirloom-level techniques, accustomed to a grandiose style, yet somewhat unsuitable for contemporary battles given their ancient nature. These crude offensive techniques are less effective against smaller opponents than the hunting tactics Karon himself has devised. Hence, this small enhancement of Karon's will focus on this aspect. In order to minimize sleep duration and enhance quickly within a short time frame, his initial plan was to nurture the enhancement of his second sub-brain into a magic power organ transmission node, similar to a heart. However, the primary function of this node is for information gathering and analysis. It would capture Karon's battle data and various information about his opponents for analysis, then synthesize and summarize the combat tactics suitable for the Red Dragon, aiding in adjusting the Red Dragon's movements and stances to achieve the maximum results with minimal effort. This node is significantly smaller than the heart and smaller than the originally planned subbrain, making it more suitable when time is insufficient. Karon shut his eyes, preparing for a short-term enhancement. The development of small nodes wouldn't consume much time, and with sufficient energy, a node could be generated in one night. Karon, Karon, can you hear me? A voice as faint as a mosquito's hum, yet with a familiar, charming lively touch. Was that the voice of the pig elf? Karon opened his eyes in doubt, but didn't see the figure of little elf Riven. However, a soft sensation lingered on his shoulder. That was the foot of little elf, who stood upon Karon's shoulder. An emotion called moved arose within the red dragon's heart. Although he indeed regarded the little elf as a friend, questioning himself, he wasn't sure if he'd chase down to hear if Riven were captured. Perhaps, little elf was his first true friend in this world. Karon quickly extended his large claw, signaling the little elf to stand in his palm, then retracted himself beneath his wide wings, hiding the little elf in the shadows. He buried his head into his wings, pretending to sleep, and whispered with the little elf, "Riven, how did you end up here?" In the shadow, Riven revealed herself. The tiny elf wasn't wearing her beloved flower crown and acorn hat at the moment, exposing flowing long hair. 2 flowers with green sprouts as buds remained tucked in her hair like little horns. Delicate elf dust quietly encircled her like a wreath. Little elf cautiously sat down in the spread dragon claw and began to speak. It turns out that day Riven saw Das and Kleena, those juvenile dragons, being captured. She wanted to inform Karon but couldn't find him. So she quietly followed behind Will's group, saw Karon being ambushed by the mage and held captive, yet couldn't immediately find a way to rescue him, thus followed the human ship. On the sea, the human ship was far off, and Riven, on shore, followed from afar. To keep track of the ship's whereabouts, the little elf even signed a magic contract with a swift renowned for endurance. Thus, the little elf followed the ship, traversing endless forests and mountains to reach the human world, only to lose her target as the juvenile dragons were sent into the imperial palace. Fortunately, the gladiatorial arena recently advertised the appearance of a giant dragon, attracting many curious onlookers, allowing Riven to once again trace Karon. Then the little elf quietly followed the feeding attendants and found the red dragon. It must be said that although the pig elf's power is weak, the magic she possesses is quite wondrous. "You're truly a good friend, Riven." The red dragon's eyes glittered with light. The arrival of the little elf afforded him more assurance. He not only wanted to escape himself but also aimed to bring the juvenile dragons back to his territory, and perhaps those alien gladiators in the arena could be brought back too. Riven's arrival provided Karon not only a route back to the dragon nest but also played a powerful role in intelligence communication, essential in understanding the external world while gathering strength. "Karon, we're forever good friends." The little elf's face brimmed with joy upon receiving the praise. "But how can I help you and those fools Das escape?" The red dragon squinted his eyes, pondered, then whispered to Riven, "Currently, I don't have much understanding of this city. Riven, I need you to scout out the defenses of this city and the locations of those dangerous mages. Moreover, if you could discreetly gather information on the nobles and ministers dissatisfied with the Emperor of the Imperial, these factions' intel might be useful to me later, but you must be very careful not to be discovered, Riven. Underneath a powerful, suppressive emperor, there must exist latent undercurrents. The stronger the emperor's oppression, the less breadth the nobility has, leading to more intense undercurrents beneath the calm surface. Even in a centralized powerful emperor can't escape this, especially not in a noble lord system imperial with vast territories. This world's emperor possesses strong personal power, yet those noble lords aren't completely ignorant ordinary people, there will always be flaws to be found. Karon only needs a tiny opportunity, and the hope of bringing the juvenile dragons out of danger would greatly increase. Oh, quietly tell Das and them to aim to win the battles. If they lose, it's alright as they can voluntarily sign an equitable magic contract. I'll figure out how to handle this." The little elf nodded her little head, "All right, but I need to sleep for a while, I haven't had a peaceful sleep in a long time." Riven's refined face was filled with sleepiness. Upon entering human society, a constant sense of crisis filled her heart, for in the eyes of humans, these elves were valuable commodities. It wasn't until she reached the red dragon's side, even if the red dragon was trapped in a cell, that the little elf felt a sense of security. Her mind relaxed, and gradually she fell asleep in Karon's palm. The red dragon gently rested his palm on the ground and also closed his eyes. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 48-6, Subbrain Node. Chapter 48, Chapter 6, Subbrain Node. When the red dragon sleeps, he is extremely quiet. He doesn't snore or grind his teeth in his sleep. He can even maintain a single posture without moving all night. Were it not for the heavy breath and powerful heartbeat causing his body to rise and fall, even the strong centaur warrior would think the red dragon was dead. Because when the red dragon falls asleep, he habitually immerses his consciousness entirely into his sea of spiritual, attempting to meld with his subconscious. Thus, the red dragon doesn't leak even the slightest breath. These mighty alien species can't even sense his spiritual waves. Without careful observation, they might think the red dragon is a plant dragon. Strange, this red dragon seems like a juvenile dragon. Why do I feel a hidden threat from him? The vampire species, skilled in manipulating the spirit, detected the red dragon's oddity, and he had the power to back up such words. Being a high-tier vampire species, his strength was slightly superior to an average high-tier extraordinary, and as a demigod descendant, he should, by logic, easily suppress an ordinary juvenile dragon. But this juvenile dragon clearly defied convention. Tch, fool, the wolf-man seized every chance to mock his adversary, looking at his massive size, you know this guy isn't ordinary stuff. The vampire species was instantly enraged, being called a fool by a dumb dog was intolerable for any vampire. He was so angry that he jumped up, you stinking dog, you'd better hope we aren't paired as opponents, otherwise I'll drain your blood and turn you into my cushion. The wolfman's green eyes gleamed, I'm also looking forward to ripping your body apart, tasting the flavor of a vampire marquis. You all better pray not to encounter this red dragon, he gives me the impression of being more dangerous than other red dragons, who are typically aggressive and stupid, although his character is unknown, said the centaur warrior, having long seen the reality of life teetering between life and death, understood the odd friendship formed between these apparent enemy alien species, knowing they might not go for the kill even when confronting each other. After all, apart from the clear-cut fights to the death, in the gladiatorial arena, ordinary battles could have both winners and losers coexisting. But encountering this red dragon was another matter, as his cruel deeds were unpredictable, given the stereotype of chaotic and violent red dragons was deeply ingrained in people's minds. Unaware of the outside quarrels, a transformation was occurring within the red dragon's body, influenced by his will. Ample energy was dispersing from the heart energy vortex and gradually absorbed by the evil dragon blood within him. The vigorous, pulsating evil dragon blood received this magical energy supplement and catalysis, gradually giving birth to a weak energy. As this energy coursed through the evil dragon blood to the entire body, a thin, nerve-like miraculous organ was slowly forming within the red dragon. Initially, it was as fine as a blood thread, and under the red dragon's automatic body adjustment, massive nutrients and magic power started concentrating to supply this thread-sized nerve network. A sound akin to drinking water gurgled and emanated from the giant dragon's belly. Once this nerve network grew and spread to the heart area, it thickened considerably. This organ extended tendrils to connect with the giant dragon's heart, then continued ascending towards the abdomen and head. Nourished by the heart's powerful magic power, this network started growing rapidly, eventually forming a thick, vascular-sized, elongated organ connecting the giant dragon's brain and heart. Unlike veins, this elongated organ was encased with a thin membrane akin to the giant dragon's bodily fluid, produced to protect the organ and dissipate excessive heat. Upon linking with the giant dragon's brain nerves, this organ began mimicking the original brain structure, forming a small nodule resembling a blood vessel, about thumb-sized, covered in brain-like wrinkles. Once this nodule was also covered with a protective and cooling membrane, the red dragon's subconscious began descending, taking command of this new organ. Pulsating under the nutrient and magic power supply, the red dragon's first sub-brain node was successfully birthed. At this moment, the red dragon also opened his eyes, his breath rippling into the perception of the three alien gladiators, and outside, dawn had broken. The little elf Riven, who had nestled in Karen's palm resting, was now long gone, likely having sneaked out of the cell before Karon woke up. Yet when Karen's consciousness was asleep, the newly formed sub-brain node, under the subconscious takeover, had subconsciously left the image of the little elf vanishing into the void from the red dragon's palm. Upon awakening, the node connecting the main brain instantly transferred this information to him, invigorating his spirit upon receiving it. It seemed his idea had garnered successful feedback. This sub-brain node somewhat resembled a biological intelligence brain. Ordinarily, like other organs in the red dragon's body, it was under Karen's subconscious command, but when Karon needed it, he could autonomously control this sub-brain node. This meant that whether in sleep or during daily activities, this sub-brain node would play a vigilance role, awakening or alerting the red dragon when necessary. In daily activities and combat, the node could also collect Karon's actions and combat data, analyzing and optimizing his movements and techniques. However, the sub-brain nodes were too few now, with just one, insufficient for supporting Karon's many operations, akin to a computer with inadequate processing power and memory. As more strengthening occurred, these nodes would gradually supplement and grow, until it formed a network of sub-brain nodes comparable to the original giant dragon brain. Only then would the true function of the sub-brain nodes be unleashed. What Karon now needed to do was consume vast amounts of food, replenishing the energy and nutrients expended in spawning sub-brain nodes. But now wasn't feeding time at the gladiatorial arena yet. Karon licked his tusks, eyed the three alien species still feigning sleep, and birthed a thought of wanting to tear open their bodies and feast on their blood and flesh. The energy-craving red dragon's gaze was brazenly greedy and aggressive, instantly startling the three strong alien species. The vampire species jumped up first. The red dragon's gaze gave him a sense of being hunted, with him as the prey. "What are you intending, red dragon?" The disgruntled vampire species was somewhat irate. Although he'd fallen to prisoner status, it was the first time he was seen as food. Intending to taste your flavor," the wolfman said sullenly. "Red dragon, wolfman meat doesn't taste good, very sour. Centaur meat isn't that great either." The centaur warrior awoke. "I'm not as clean as a vampire, I've not cleaned myself for a long time." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 49-7, Blood Alone Cannot Satisfy Me. Chapter 49, Chapter 7, Blood Alone Cannot Satisfy Me. Karon moved his body, his massive form awkwardly circling in the cell, appearing extremely uncoordinated, occasionally twisting an ankle due to uneven stress. Fortunately, the excellent physical qualities of a giant dragon prevented him from getting injured. Otherwise, Karon might have become the first dragon in the world to twist an ankle while walking. Karon attempted to actively use the nodes of his newborn sub-brain to control his body, but it seemed that these new nodes were not yet ready for such a heavy task. After trying for half a day, he decisively gave up on this idea. He couldn't rush it at this point. Today, Karon still didn't make an appearance, but he could hear the occasional enthusiastic cheers and commotion from above ground, sometimes catching the word juvenile dragon. Unfortunately, the magic arrays on both the ground and the two layers below the gladiatorial arena isolated his senses, so he didn't know which juvenile dragon had appeared. Moreover, the cells of the gladiatorial arena were circularly distributed around the entire arena, so his view couldn't observe the other juvenile dragons, though he wasn't too worried about them. The first gladiatorial fight shouldn't arrange particularly powerful opponents for the juvenile dragons, these juvenile dragons are probably the arena's cash cows and trademarks, and those in charge wouldn't be so short-sighted. Even though the juvenile dragons were still in their baby phase, they were true dragons, superior to most creatures in the world. Not even an extraordinary warrior or an extraordinary magical beast should think about challenging a juvenile dragon one-on-one. Hey, giant dragon, kill them, smash them! A man stood up and shouted, and the crowd, eager for excitement and bloodshed, echoed his call. The atmosphere in the stands reached a fever pitch. What a beautiful beast! Hey, tear those gladiators apart and eat them piece by piece, and I will reward you with a gold coin. An old man in a nobility-styled robe loftily tossed a beautifully crafted gold coin in his hand high into the air, letting it fall beside the ring wall of the arena. Women also cheered, throwing down their headscarves and flower crowns, adding to the atmosphere of the arena. A few exceptionally bold and uninhibited women even lifted their clothes, removed their underwear, and waved them around with their hands. These people craved the thrill of bloodlust, nearly going mad under the rush of adrenaline. With scales bright red as flame, a 5-meter-long body, and wings spread out to 10 meters, this was Kleena, the headstrong young female dragon. Kleena listened to the thunderous cheers and noises of the crowd, and her dragon blood began to heat up. She wanted to spread her wings and fly high, turning her hidden fury into flames to reduce everyone to ashes, making them scream in agony as they died. But the powerful warriors emitting waves of extraordinary power in the stands and the strong magic energy of the magical barrier covering the arena's dome kept her sensible. She might suddenly rise up and kill many humans who came to the gladiatorial arena seeking excitement before being subdued again. But who cared? Those high and mighty nobility didn't care, and neither did the dragon group, nor did these humans themselves. With clarity, Kleena felt a strong sense of disgust. She began to loathe her own weakness, loathe how her life was controlled by others like fish on a chopping board. She hated having to watch Karon stand alone as the lone dragon in front of the dragon group without being able to help, hated how she and the dragon group had become burdens to Karon. Since Kleena's consciousness was born from the eggshell, she had always watched Karon, her sibling, yet Karon's consciousness awakened later than hers, making him her younger brother. Whenever Kleena tried to communicate through consciousness with Karon, she received no response, even fearing that her sibling might become a lowly unintelligent beast or a stillborn fetus. But that unresponsive fool hatched before she did, turning the elder female dragon into the younger sister. Thus, the competitive young female dragon challenged Karon's position. She failed, but she didn't give up. She's still yearning for the day she could follow in Karon's footsteps, defeat him, and make him willingly submit, rescinding the stupid younger sister remark. But as time passed, that goal seemed to drift farther away, until now, she had become the burdening hind leg dragging Karon down. Far off into the distance, Kleena's cold vertical pupils fixed forward, observing 5 elite gladiators in iron armor with long spears and shields, trotting towards her while tapping on their shields, her increasingly feverish dragon blood urging her to unleash destructive flames. Yet Kleena suppressed the dragon fire, deeply embedding it into her own evil dragon blood. Then the red dragon spread her wings, bared vicious fangs, and dashed towards the gladiators. The repeatedly compacted ground erupted in dust as the wind howled, and the scarlet juvenile dragon, its eyes glimmering like flames burning, emerged from the swirling dust like a monster appearing out of a mist. A frontal gladiator shouted, lowering his body and raising his shield, spear aimed at the charging red dragon. Bang! The sharp claws of the red dragon, filled with rage, slammed into the iron-plated sturdy wooden shield, sending both the shield and the gladiator flying. The shield, whirling mid-air, bore 5 large openings, almost shattered to pieces. And as the gladiator was swept aside, blood had already spilled from his face, spewing from his mouth like a running faucet, landing on the ground lifelessly distanced away. The gladiator's only achievement was leaving a negligible scratch on the red dragon's body with his long spear. The entire gladiatorial arena roared, but Kleena didn't care. Her charge knew no halt, her running body lowered its head and rammed into another gladiator's shield head-on. Her hard skull crushed the shield, and her sharp dragon horns hoisted the gladiator upwards, blood flowing down the dragon horn, mingling with fresh dragon blood from the new wounds, dripping down. Roar! The pain from behind made Kleena roar, and a few long spears pierced into the red dragon's back, but the hurried attack by gladiators terrified by their companions' quick deaths left fatal gaps. Kleena's long tail swung with a gusty sound, sweeping under the gladiator's legs like a siege hammer, the force instantly pulverizing the gladiator's legs. Ah! 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 The heart-breaking howls, gladiators clutched their crushed legs, rolling on the ground in agony. Even the fear of death couldn't dispel the immediate pain. Kleena shook off the gladiator's body from her dragon horns, taking steps forward, then with satisfaction on her face, crushing the remaining gladiators' heads one by one with her dragon claws as she listened to their laments. At this moment, the gladiatorial arena's cheering reached its peak, the blazing atmosphere seemed even the magic array on the dome couldn't contain, reaching far away. Look, these are the beautiful and mighty giant dragons, savage and bloodthirsty monsters. Men shouted fervently, women moaned, their faces flushed as if reaching a climax in life at that moment. But Kleena calmly glanced at her claws, covered in the clammy white brain matter, lowered her head, sniffed, then coolly licked them clean. From today on, she would regard herself as the sharpest weapon. Kleena would pursue Karon's stride, sever the chains binding the giant dragons for freedom and the dragon group, making herself stronger. Feeling the somewhat satisfied surging evil dragon blood, she roared skyward, the spreading dragon power and resounding dragon roar muffling the arena's clamor. Kleena bellowed, "Come on, come on, the blood isn't enough to satiate me, I long for battle." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 50-8, A Seemingly Simple Plan. Chapter 50, Chapter 8, A Seemingly Simple Plan. In the deep underground dungeon, Karon, who never paid much attention to the concept of precise time, had blurred his own sense of time. However, the daily feeding schedule and the cheers from above the gladiatorial arena helped him grasp the passage of time. Half a month had already passed, and his sub-brain nodes had grown from 1 to 6. But the time required for the latter nodes to develop grew longer, consuming most of the accumulated heart energy. The nutrition in Karon's body was also gradually falling behind, no longer as abundant as the food in the Dragon Nest territory, with only the fixed ration of 3 meals a day. Now the red dragon's body had become a bit thinner, although its frame was still large, it was clearly a skinny dragon. However, the dragon race does not advocate slimness as beauty, and Karon also prefers himself to be more mighty and robust. That way, he possesses greater deterrence and the beauty of strength. Fortunately, the 6 sub-brain nodes that had fully developed and formed had connected to form a sub-brain node group, which was barely enough to take on the tasks Karon assigned to his sub-brain. And the Pick Elf brought some good news to the Red Dragon. "According to what you said, this Emperor of the Imperial is incredibly powerful, even the official apprentices accepted by advanced mages need to apply and report to the Imperial's administrative department. Being a bit domineering is good." The slit pupils of the Red Dragon flickered with lively flames in the shadow under its wings. It seemed that the Emperor of the Imperial had an excessively strong desire for power, wanting to suppress all the forces within the Imperial. Except for the direct loyal nobles and mages to this Emperor, most other nobles and mages belong to the neutral faction. This explains a lot. No one wants an unshakable iron curtain looming over their heads, the Red Dragon said while looking at the elf seated in his palm. No wonder that squinting mage Hughes had once hinted that he could help Karon. It seems that the squinting mage was the eyes planted in the loyal faction by the neutral faction, and did not want the Emperor's power to grow further. If the growing dragon group were successfully absorbed by the Emperor, it would be a terrifying increase in power. So it seems, Will Clarence and his family should be loyal to the Emperor's faction. The Red Dragon squinted its eyes. Many things and opportunities needed to be observed through Hughes to become apparent to him. Gently, he said, you've worked hard, Riven, and I'll need to trouble you to meet with the high-tier student of that neutral mage and tell him I need to meet with him, maybe there's a deal he'd be very interested in. However, don't go to him personally, just have someone else deliver the message. Okay, but I need to get a good nap first. The petite elf lay in the warm palm of the red dragon, let out a long yawn, and then gradually fell asleep. The red dragon also habitually placed his broad hand flat on the ground, then selected a comfortable position with his head, resting it on his other claw, closed his eyes, and quietly fell asleep. As Karon gnawed and swallowed the last bone of the whole pig delivered early today, the squinting mage already stood at the doorway of the dungeon, observing the red dragon's every move. Long time no see, red dragon. I knew you were a smart giant dragon. The squinting mage had an air of confidence, as though he held all the aces. Karon squatted down, folded the wings covered with fine scale armor beside him, and with crimson pupils looked at the mage whose face always had a mysterious smile, somewhat displeasedly said, "Hey, mage, can you speak with your eyes open?" The squinting mage Hughes was instantly stunned, his eyes widening in surprise. "What the bleep, are my eyes really that small?" Karon did not answer the mage's question. A trace of a smile flashed through the crimson-slit pupils, then, with a serious tone, he shifted the topic. "Tell me, mage, what ways do you have to help me?" Phew, Hughes let out a breath, habitually squinting again, and shook his head. "If you had agreed to cooperate earlier, we could have intercepted you in advance. As long as you voluntarily signed a contract with me, even the Emperor of the Imperial would have to acknowledge this fact. But now the Emperor has already taken control of the Dragon Group's allegiance. He intends to tame you and that red dragon as his most powerful war tools to protect the royal war beast. Even my teacher, the Holy Sanctuary Grandmaster Mage, can't retrieve your allegiance." Karon was very aware of the mage's plans, claiming to help, but in fact, wanted to subdue him, then use him to control the Dragon Group's power. However, upon hearing the Emperor's decision, he couldn't help but surge with anger, a jet of fire spewing from the red dragon's nostrils, his deep voice echoing down the empty corridor. "So mage, did you come here just to mock me?" The squinting mage shook his head. For balance, the Emperor of the Imperial allows the nobles to freely select the other juvenile dragons after their defeat. As long as they can sign a contract with the juvenile dragons, the Emperor of the Imperial will also recognize the juvenile dragon's allegiance. I've come here this time to persuade you to encourage the blue dragon and the green dragon to sign contracts with our faction of mages. We respect the opinions and rights of the giant dragons more than the Emperor of the Imperial, and the juvenile dragons will also gain corresponding freedom. We are the better choice. Ha! You cannot bring me any help, but dare to ask for mine." The sparks from the red dragon's breath became even more intense. He stood up, his ferocious head stretching towards the iron door made of fine steel, staring straight at the mage. "Are you willing to be suppressed by the Emperor's authority for so long? I've heard that you honorable mages have to report a large magic experiment to the Imperial's related administrative departments." The squinting mage maintained a smile on his face, spreading his hands nonchalantly. "What can we do? The Emperor of the Imperial not only possesses supreme strength himself but also has the support of countless nobles and legion warriors. We mages just prefer to research some magic. It doesn't matter whether we're suppressed or not. After all, we're not those nobles who prioritize power over life." Karon smirked inwardly, because every mage required resources beyond calculation. Not to mention those fearsome magic materials. Merely the magic potions and various magic gem crystals that assisted in a mage's cultivation were something that a smaller noble could hardly afford. Not to mention these high-tier mages, behind each mage, there must be one or more nobles supporting, able to afford the consumption of a mage. It appeared that neutral mages and neutral nobility might still be a bit unclear about the situation from within, but from the outside, he was not confused. The pursuit of interests is something that cannot be changed by anything. The red dragon's voice lowered, imbued with a tempting strength, revealing the massive white fangs of the giant dragon. "What if, one day the dragon group accidentally escaped and unintentionally slaughtered all those loyal to the emperor of the imperial nobles. What kind of accident would that be? The smile on the squinting mage's face finally disappeared, taking in a cool breath. Red Dragon, this might be an idea, but I cannot call the shots on this matter. I need to go back. Perhaps next time I return, I'll bring the news you've been expecting. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 51-9, The Red Dragon's Experiment. Chapter 51, Chapter 9, The Red Dragon's Experiment. The mage's response was good news for Karon, as it proved that his line of thinking wasn't entirely wrong. Although the terrifying mountain that is the Emperor of the Imperial Empire still needed confronting, the chances would increase if he had the support of these neutral faction members. Perhaps Karon could endure, relying on accumulated energy and natural growth to eventually escape successfully. But some things, when held onto for too long, do not age like fine wine. Instead, they fade and disappear. If one becomes accustomed to this kind of life, perhaps Karon would not change his will. But those juvenile dragons, once they get used to yielding, might just become accustomed to kneeling. This is something Karon could not tolerate. Therefore, Karon is willing to act as the titular blade, and he and the dragon group would become a sharp knife, to cut away the shackles upon them. Though the road ahead remains tough, as long as their purpose is aligned, they would find an appropriate opportunity, and he would not drown in adversity. Another day passed. And finally, the first gladiatorial battle for the Red Dragon arrived. Today, the attendants did not feed the Red Dragon on schedule, perhaps to keep the dragon hungry, to stir its wild and beastly nature. The gladiatorial arena always catered to the violent thrill-seekers in the audience with maximum gore and excitement. As Karon followed the trembling attendants out of the long passage into the daylight, the atmosphere of the gladiatorial arena reached a climax. Countless cheers accompanied by ladies' undergarments filled the air, leaving the giant dragon's sensitive ears and eyes stunned. The Red Dragon, with heavy footsteps, walked into the arena. Although it hadn't gotten enough food to develop in the giant dragon territory, Karon, in his juvenile growth period, reached over 8 meters, nearing 9 meters. His somewhat thin frame no longer carried the full robustness it once had but instead exuded a more vicious aura. At this point, the weight of the Red Dragon could no longer be measured, not even the largest common elephants of the grasslands would weigh half as much as the dragon. The solid muscles and tightly knit dragon bone structure made each step of the Red Dragon create a fierce visual impact. The firm and powerful steps and relaxed posture instantly put the spirits of the two strong ogres opposite him on edge. The Red Dragon, the most brutal of the true dragon species, even though this wasn't a fight to the death, if they couldn't defeat the dragon, it would surely be their downfall. The 4-meter-tall two-headed ogre had a moment of enlightenment. This ogre, though not possessing the atavistic bloodline like the ogre tyrant Moergo, had grown a second head, clearly stepping into the extraordinary realm. Normal two-headed ogres have the potential to become powerful wizards and possess stronger souls and spiritual power than ordinary beings. But this ogre chose not to become a wizard, instead becoming a powerful warrior. This made it more dangerous than an ordinary ogre mage, for it not only possessed a strong body and excellent combat skills but could also cast some magic. The weapon in its hand was a double-headed flail, a weapon embedded with spikes that only creatures of immense strength could wield. Even the Red Dragon had to be cautious as its skin defense couldn't entirely block its terrifying attacks. The other ogre, although lacking the dual-headed ogre's extraordinary talent, was clearly a warrior at the peak of ogre bloodline growth. With no less height and equally strong physique covered with scars, the ogre in front was a battle-hardened warrior. It used a long-handled heavy hammer as a weapon, grinning excitedly at the relaxed posture of the juvenile Red Dragon. Its coarse and clouded tongue couldn't help but lick its cracked lips, longing for the nourishment of dragon blood, as gladiators do. The two ogres spread out at an angle for a pincer attack, waiting for the impulsive juvenile Red Dragon to make the first move. Then they could use wolf pack tactics to tire out the Red Dragon's stamina and eventually defeat the giant dragon. But Karon did not initiate an attack, instead, he released his dragon power. Though not intense, the spreading pressure persistently oppressed and distracted the two ogres. The red dragon circled the two ogres slowly, like a big cat toying with mice. The newly formed sub-brain cluster in his mind began silently operating. The responses and information from the ogres facing the dragon power and pressure of the giant dragon were captured and analyzed by the sub-brain cluster, which also gathered data from Karon's movements. The sub-brain cluster started to combine the collected information from both sides, including facial expressions and action analysis, to predict what might happen next, and it adjusted the red dragon's attack posture accordingly. These two ogres became Karon's test subjects, including Karon himself. What is this red dragon doing? It should be pouncing and tearing apart its prey like a beast. Audience members who came for blood and excitement began to express discontent. What's the management of the gladiatorial arena doing? Maybe they fed this beast too well today, it has no desire to attack. Is this what we came here for? Damn it, refund me. Kill those filthy ogres, red dragon, like a beast. The tumultuous noise from the stands and the giant dragon's oppressive dragon power gradually drove the ogres into agitation, and the red dragon's playful demeanor added to their stress. The two ogres exchanged glances, and the two-headed ogre invoked its internal magic power, casting a layer of stony skin protection over the surface of both ogres. Then a layer of bloody radiance enveloped them, and their bodies slightly grew in size. Feeling the surge of power within, their courage increased, and with weapons raised, they stepped forward aggressively towards the dragon. The two-headed ogre roared, swinging the double-headed flail with a whooshing sound towards the red dragon's head, the spikes glinting coldly. The other ogre roared in tandem, wielding the long-handled heavy hammer towards the red dragon's heavy lower body, its elliptical hammerhead packed with immense force, capable of flattening iron shields and splintering wooden shields, even indenting the sturdiest iron armor. Karon's sub-brain cluster in his mind operated feverishly, capturing the trajectory of the ogre's weapon swings, then providing predictions and analyses. Under the state of mental overclocking and with the aid of the sub-brain cluster, Karon corrected the previous habitual gesture of giant dragons spreading their wings before attacking. He utilized his powerful hind legs to engage his somewhat weaker forelimbs, quickly stepping back twice, then rearing up, lowering his head, and aligning it with his raised dragon claw. Whoosh, whoosh, two powerful gusts of wind swept over the top of his head and the front of his underbelly, his contracted forelimbs rapidly descended, smashing into the ground with the force of 1,000-pound weight, creating two shallow pits on a solid surface. Then, using his rapidly descended forelimbs firmly planted in the ground as a fulcrum, the dragon's unimaginably dense bones allowed him to unleash a fierce force, twisting his resilient body. The entire rear half of the dragon's body, along with its lengthy tail, whipped around, striking the ogre's mid-weapon swing. Bam, bam, two successive heavy blows, and even though Karon held back his strength, the two ogres were sent flying by the immense force, rolling on the ground several times, their stone-skinned bodies fracturing and shattering. Karon's heavy footsteps settled onto the ogres sprawled on the ground. The red dragon looked down at the ogres, his cold-slitted pupils filled with cruelty and indifference. Get up, continue fighting me. This is the only chance you have to survive. Both ogres roared, picking up their weapons and charging again, swinging their terrifying flail and hammer at the red dragon. But the red dragon, at this moment, moved like the world's most masterful warrior, needing no mental overclocking, his massive body displaying unparalleled agility and nimbleness, as the whistling heavy hammer and flail seemed like mere toys, easily dodged. The two ogres were like puppets on strings, gradually swinging their weapons mindlessly, expending their energy blindly. Finally, the two ogres, whose stamina far surpassed humans, were overburdened, panting heavily, dropped their weapons, and collapsed onto the ground. We surrender. Their urgent panting like a broken bellows, the two ogres exhausted, knelt before the red dragon, having struggled as much as they could, fulfilling his wish. Karon lowered his head, cold pupils gazing at the ogres, then mercilessly crushed the hard skull of the defenseless ogre. Useless creatures. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 52-10, Universal Slayer. Chapter 52, Chapter 10, Universal Slayer. The atmosphere in the gladiatorial arena was finally unleashed at the last moment. They eagerly witnessed the beasts and bloodshed they had longed for. Although it did not completely satisfy them, it was far better than watching an entire show of cats teasing mice. The crowds of the gladiatorial arena dispersed with lingering excitement, unaware that the Emperor of the Imperial had quietly arrived at the highest platform of the arena. Accompanied only by the man named Karon and the minister known as Rebus, without bringing a large group of guards for protection. Of course, in this empire, his power was akin to a legend, so why would he need the protection of guards? Sometimes these guards were even a burden. The Imperial Emperor's little princess, Lady Leia, was also sitting on Karon's shoulder, swinging her legs, her eyes filled with the curiosity of an innocent child. Having watched the entire gladiatorial combat, Emperor Karol Caesar II displayed a hint of a smile as he turned to his most cherished daughter and teasingly said, "Noble Princess Leia, how about making that red dragon your pet? With its company, you'll never be timid again." Leia's golden hair whimsically curled as she stared with her large, round eyes at her father, the Emperor, and playfully said, "But I think the green dragon's scales are the most beautiful, father. Please let me have the green dragon instead, Leia loves her best." Karol Caesar II's smile faded slightly. He did not respond directly to his daughter but instead glanced indifferently at Rebus standing nearby. "These juvenile dragons have performed satisfactorily, let them train here for now, and find a chance to let them fail once they have trained enough." His words were imbued with undeniable authority as he stood up and walked toward the exit. "If any juvenile dragon is unwilling, kill them." However, the mighty Imperial Emperor failed to notice someone hidden among the crowd on the opposite platform, gazing at him. The person was a charming woman holding the hand of a golden-haired boy around 10 years old. The boy was complaining, "These 5-color dragons are a disgrace to the giant dragons, unworthy of being called true dragons with us golden dragons. How can they be captured by humans? That red dragon should have torn apart those 2 vile ogres with its claws." The charming lady withdrew her gaze and shook her head. "The 5-color dragons are inherently selfish, with no one willing to help them. The 5-headed dragon god no longer protects them for some reason, they're quite pitiable." Karon hadn't yet stepped into his cell when the vampire species, who'd long awaited the opportunity, started to chatter loudly, "See, I knew the powerful giant dragon would win effortlessly. Look at the giant dragon's majestic form, it makes me envious." "Bah," said the silver-furred wolfman as he cast a disdainful glance at the ingratiating vampire species, spat a mouthful from his fang-filled mouth. If only he knew the phrase "one who bows after arrogance," he might have uttered it. "Spineless vampire species, does Red Dragon's mighty strength need your praise?" The wolfman turned and shot a deliberately flattering smile at Karon. "Tch," the centaur warrior sneered disdainfully, standing and calling to the Red Dragon, "Are you hungry, Red Dragon? I saved a bull leg today, would you like to try my meal's taste?" The Red Dragon entered the cell and lay down. "Call me Karon, you may address me as such." Then he ignored the flattery of the 3 alien species. The conversation with the mage wasn't kept secret from these aliens. The mage wasn't concerned they overheard, as his talks with the Red Dragon were not specific matters. One was a mage of noble status, the other was a downtrodden slave gladiator. Their societal positions were vastly different. Since that day, these 3 aliens began showing marked flattery toward the Red Dragon, hoping it might be their final chance to change their prisoner fate. Karon knew the time wasn't yet ripe, especially as there'd been no word from Mage Hughes, hence, he paid no mind to the slightly amusing flattery from the 3 aliens and simply calmed himself, closing his eyes. His spirit received transmissions from the sub-brain's gathered information. Karon deliberately refrained from instantly killing the two ogre gladiators to test the newly created sub-brain's functions. Moreover, he could gather more information from not only his combat with the ogres but also from the spectators and the gladiatorial arena's layout. Currently, the sub-brain's information has become a vast ocean, as the main consciousness commandeered the sub-brain instead of relying on the body's subconscious operation, and under Karon's will, selectively logged collected information. Instead, every observable piece of information was gathered by the sub-brain without classification and filtering, resulting in a chaotic, cumbersome, inflated transmission to Karon. Even if the two ogres still had strength to assist in testing, Karon would have swiftly killed them, for the sub-brain already bore the burden of various erratic information influences. This was due to the red dragon's inexperience, as every creature's brain is equipped with protective filtering and classification settings. Irrelevant information gets ignored while important details are recorded. Fortunately, as a giant dragon, Karon naturally possesses a large brain and strong spiritual power, his willpower firm enough. Otherwise, any ordinary being facing such a situation might experience a literal brain burst, dying on the spot. Learning from this lesson, the red dragon knew not to casually use the main consciousness to take over the sub-brain before mastering it proficiently, letting the body's subconscious regulate the sub-brain's synchronization according to inherent brain protection systems. Karon's spirit swam in the information sea within the sub-brain, classifying the gathered data step by step, filtering out useless information, leaving only the necessary parts. For example, the layout of the gladiatorial arena, the magic array's magic nodes, and information captured during the red dragon's fight against ogres. With the sub-brain's information gathering and analysis, given time, Karon would surely develop targeted attack strategies for warriors of every race in the world. The more battles Karon experiences, the more information he gathers, the richer and more targeted his offensive tactics become. If the sub-brain's functions strengthen as Karon envisioned, then as time and battle counts grow, Karon will possess special attack combat skills against every race in the world. Although this was merely Karon's original intention in choosing this enhancement, he has a sense that numerous uses for the sub-brain are still awaiting his exploration. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 53-11, White Tower Mage. Chapter 53, Chapter 11, White Tower Mage. Good day, esteemed Mr. Karon. Your majestic gaze has once again graced this world. The obsequious vampire count performed an elegant yet exaggerated gesture of respect, bowing to Karon, who had just opened his eyes. Ah, Mr. Karon appears even more formidable today. The silver-haired werewolf forced a smile on his scarred and misshapen face, his tail wagging unconsciously twice behind him. Then, the half-man, half-horse caught sight of the wagging tail. The werewolf quickly pressed his misbehaving tail down with his hand, glaring at the centaur. Karon shook his head. He was used to it. After days of sorting, he finally organized all the redundant information collected by the sub-brain node group. Thanks to the feedback from the ogre giant demon, his ever-strengthening mental power easily handled this task. The current ogre giant demon was akin to another head growing from Karon. This was the result of the giant demon's talent being counteracted and its resultant influence. As long as the ogre giant demons survive and grow, Karon can receive positive feedback from the giant demon Fafnir. Although giant demons are severely inclined towards spiritual power, this can still benefit Karon greatly. The increase in mental power has multifaceted benefits, not only enhancing Karon's own magic protection for mental power attacks but also allowing his mind to stay clear. Maintaining clarity can avoid unnecessary mistakes. With the strengthening of mental power, Karon's perception strength and range have also increased. Although accurate judgment cannot be made inside the prison cell, Karon can feel it. Furthermore, powerful mental strength can help Karon dig into the treasure hidden within his evil dragon bloodline, those heritage marks of the giant dragon. The current Karon has started to touch the fringe edges of the evil dragon bloodline without relying on sleep. In time, he will genuinely open the treasure-filled door. If Karon desires to pursue the path of magic knowledge exploration in the future, powerful mental prowess is an excellent talent. Even now, the red dragon's evil dragon blood absorbs magic power at a slightly faster pace, proving that the growth of spiritual power can affect Karon's body. It is beneficial for Karon's growth and development. Get out, Carlet! Not only do you willingly bow to humans, but you also try to help them convince us? Be careful, or one day, when we get the chance, the dragon group will tear you apart. An angry roar in dragon language echoed through the quiet corridor. This was the voice of the blue dragon Das. Apparently, Das was also deeply ashamed of his kin for betraying the dragon group. Although the juvenile dragon's prison cells were relatively far away from Karon, Das's angry voice reached here quite clearly. Carlet came to persuade the juvenile dragons? Karon recalled the information gathered by the sub-brain node group and indeed noticed Carlet's presence in the stands. Although Carlet appeared in the form of a human using transformation skills, Karon recognized Carlet not because he had seen his transformed appearance before, but due to the sense among the true dragon race. However, the lady sitting next to Carlet gave Karon an incredibly odd feeling. He sensed that the lady seemed to possess emotional fluctuations more intense than everyone else in the gladiatorial arena. Additionally, the silver-haired beautiful lady and the golden-haired young man caught Karon's attention. Squinting his eyes, he sensed that these two individuals too should belong to the true dragon species, though he couldn't ascertain their specific species without a face-to-face meeting. However, this information temporarily held no practical use for Karon as he familiarized himself with the functions and operations of the sub-brain node group, awaiting the arrival of the squinting mage. Yesterday, Riven had already informed him that Mage Zaius would visit him today. Karon waited until late at night, thinking Mage Zaius wouldn't come, and just as he was preparing to rest, squinting Mage Zaius quietly appeared outside his prison cell. "I almost thought you would stand me up today, Mage." Karon's vertical pupils shone brightly in the dusky lamplight, his crimson eyes particularly dazzling in the dim light of the night. Although Mage Zaius didn't skip the appointment, he intentionally left this juvenile dragon hanging. Last time, this juvenile dragon mocked him for his small eyes. The mage was generous, but a bit small-minded. The squinting mage didn't speak to the red dragon. He instructed the attendant to open the prison cell door and with a smile, raised his magic staff to cast a veil-like stealth spell over the red dragon, then said, "A mage doesn't easily break an appointment. Credibility is very important to a mage. By the way, red dragon, don't take this opportunity to escape. Your outing today was approved under my teacher's name for an experiment on dragons by the Emperor of the Imperial. Don't cause trouble for me." Karon revealed a toothy, white smile. "I'm not that foolish." "Good, follow me. My teacher is waiting for you." Zaius led the red dragon, now hidden, out into the deep underground passage. He saw the sleeping juvenile dragons, each curled up in the furthest corners of their cells, most of them bearing minor wounds. Evidently, these juvenile dragons had experienced battles during this time. He didn't step forward to greet them at this point. With Riven's help, his communication with the juvenile dragons had never been interrupted. Karon silently gathered all necessary information using the sub-brain node group, from the underground cell to outside the gladiatorial arena, and from there to the slightly secluded mage tower. Ignoring the brightly lit areas and the somewhat noisy populace even at night, the city's layout gradually became clear in the red dragon's mind along the way. During this journey, Karon also detected the scent of pick elves. Clearly, pick elves had been secretly following Karon, and the clever Riven didn't reveal any trace. "That is the high-level mage association," Zaius noted Karon's gaze. It was a cluster of circular lighthouse buildings occupying a vast area. This area remained brightly lit even in the dead of night, with occasional haunting cries of I succeeded," emerging from unknown towers. The Emperor of the Empire concentrated all registered extraordinary mages in the city in this area for convenience of management. "You see the guard army patrolling day and night nearby." Zaius didn't mind explaining these things to the red dragon. Everyone in the Gata Empire knew their emperor had a strong tendency for control. Go ahead, I won't go in. My teacher is waiting for you inside. I hope you'll receive the good news you're hoping for. Mage Zayas stopped as a large 6-story white tower appeared before Karon. 2 neatly dressed servants were waiting for his arrival at the door. Welcome, esteemed guest. The servants spoke in a mechanical-like voice, seemingly more machine than real, as their eyes gleamed with faint magical light, surprisingly seeing through Mage Zayas' stealth spell on the dragon. The red dragon's attention was instantly caught by these 2 seemingly human-like servants. Magic puppets, lifelike puppets powered by magic gemstones or magic nodes, can serve as experimental assistants and daily servants in the hands of some mages. There are rumors of more powerful mages hiding stronger golems and similar magical construct creatures within their half-planes and mage towers. Yet, many mages' demonic puppets are easy to see through. The ones before Karon seemed so realistic, even the dragon thought they were 2 real people. It seems the owner of this white tower has considerable capabilities, Karon thought, raising his head as he stepped through the white tower's gate. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 54-12, Only a Legend Can Face a Legend. Chapter 54, Chapter 12, Only a Legend Can Face a Legend. Perhaps because the White Tower isn't very tall, it has been deliberately widened considerably, and perhaps the mage has also released some space-folding spells within the White Tower. When Karon, over 8 meters tall, entered the White Tower, he felt a sense of spaciousness. Behind the elaborate screens in this spacious reception hall, there is undoubtedly more expansive space. Karon doesn't understand space spells, but it's his intuition as a member of the true dragon race. Led by an attendant demonic puppet, Karon ascended a wide, winding staircase. Mysterious and abstruse magic runes covered the stairs, each rune seeming to contain unique meaning and power as Karon observed them. At the entrance to each level, there stood a fully armored magic guard. The iron armor covering their entire bodies and the long swords emitting a cold gleam all exuded waves of magic energy, indicating they were finely crafted magic weapons. The magic guard's red, ghostly eyes peered out from fully enclosed iron helmets, fixated on Karon's figure. Only the guidance of the demonic puppet kept them in place, loyally guarding the path upward. Karon lost track of how many levels he ascended, far more than 6 to his recollection. Just when he thought the stairs seemed endless, the demonic puppet leading him finally stopped before a large white door. 2 demonic puppets, dressed as maidservants, bowed to Karon and greeted, "Honored guest, the master is waiting for your visit inside. Please enter." Though somewhat anxious, Karon noted that the mysterious great mage's actions within this white tower fully aligned with his impression of powerful mages. However, he could infer some of the great mage's attitudes from the attendant's demeanor. Thus, Red Dragon pushed open the door and stepped inside. To Red Dragon's surprise, the floor of the White Tower was a simple space, like a slightly larger loft, seemingly a place for the tower's master to rest and relax occasionally. There was merely a lounge chair and a small table covered with a beautiful tablecloth before a large window. A cup on the table emitted steam as a white-haired old mage in a light robe gazed leisurely out of the large window, lost in thought. Upon hearing Red Dragon's footsteps, the white-haired old mage turned around and said with a squinting smile, "You're here, feel free to sit." Magic's spiritual light flowed through the mage's hands, shattering the ring of magic binding Red Dragon. The mage seemed entirely unconcerned about the giant dragon's approach. The smiling, squinting eyes felt very familiar to Karon, making him realize where the squinting mage Hugh's habit of smiling with squinting eyes originated. Karon harbored no unrealistic thoughts of causing trouble within a holy sanctuary Grandmaster's mage tower. Indeed, even among the 5-colored dragon species, only white dragons would dare such a thing. Red Dragon obediently approached and sat beside the mage, gazing out of the large window. In the distance, the brilliantly lit, majestic imperial palace came into view. "Look at how grand His Majesty the Emperor's palace is," said the old smiling mage, pointing at the palace. No building in the entire city can surpass the palace. In truth, your intentions can be seen through by anyone perceptive, but the nobility dare not act because this is the path chosen by His Majesty the Emperor. Before His Majesty the Emperor fails, these timid and greedy nobles will bury their heads in the sand, hoping the Emperor won't notice them. Understanding that the mage's words weren't mere idle conversation, Karon asked puzzledly, "Chosen path? What path? Do you know what the most important thing is to become a mage?" The old white-haired mage suddenly shifted the topic, asking in return. Spiritual power? Or magic element talent? Karon was a bit bewildered, disliking this enigmatic approach but aware his metaphorical fists were no match for the mage's, and not the physical kind. The white-haired mage shook his head, "Wrong. Becoming a mage isn't about those, it's about your perspective on the real world and your way of thinking. Everyone perceives the world differently. What they see and hear isn't the real world but a projection of the world onto their consciousness through their perception, so most people and mages heavily misinterpret the real world. The stronger the mage, the deeper their understanding of the real world. Or conversely, the deeper a mage's understanding of the real world, the stronger they become." Karon cherished this rare, valuable knowledge since the giant dragons had no such knowledge inheritance, relying on dragon blood alone to rank high in the biological food chain. Although he didn't know why the mage imparted such precious knowledge, Karon perked up his ears, trying to digest the mage's words. And this is also the most crucial aspect of stepping into legend. The old mage seemed indifferent to the astonishing nature of his words, raised his right hand, and asked, "Do you say this is the right hand or left hand?" Karon knew the mage's question couldn't be that simple, but after thinking for a while, he still couldn't figure it out and could only hesitantly reply, right hand, I guess." The old mage squinted his eyes into near slits with a smile, took a sip from the cup on the table to moisten his throat, coughed, and then said, "If legend calls it the right hand, it's the right hand. If legend calls it the left hand, it's the left hand." Karon's dragon eyes widened. Can legend alter others' perceptions? Yes and no, the old mage did not keep Karon in suspense this time. His expression turned serious. Every true legend must construct a complete world understanding and comprehension based on the real world. These understandings and comprehensions become each legend's unique ability. But all genuine legends share a fundamental commonality: they can overlay others' perceptions with their understanding of the real world. In other words, if you're not a legend, what you face is a creator. Even among the strongest gold dragons with the most potent bloodlines, exceptional dragons can possess the ability to rival legends upon reaching adulthood. Yet, facing a legendary mage, even if they can't kill the dragon, they can easily trap it, and a legendary mage can even take the time to conduct intriguing experiments on other planes. This is also why only upon reaching legend can one qualify to step out of the main plane and venture into the star realm and void. In the star realm and void, there are no conventional definitions of up, down, left, right, or object concepts. Many places are even in chaos, and only by constructing a unique, complete understanding of the world can one avoid being trapped there. With a stern face, the old mage warned Karon, "In the future, remember to run as far as you can if you encounter other legends before you reach legend. Only a legend can face a legend." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 55-13, The Emperor's Legendary Path. Chapter 55, Chapter 13, The Emperor's Legendary Path. Karon listened with cold sweat nearly breaking out. According to the mage, any legendary figure could easily invert and twist another person's pseudo-vacuous worldview, if you're not legendary yourself. And this is just one of the most basic capabilities of being legendary. What is this pseudo-vacuous worldview? To put it simply, it's the perception and understanding of every material thing in this world. In other words, a legend can make those whose essence has not yet reached the legendary level take what's above as below, left as right, true as false. Only those legends who have similarly constructed their own worldview system can confront a legend. This is what truly defines the threshold of becoming a legend. Those who are not cannot even see the true form of their opponent in battle. Even without the mage's reminder, after knowing how terrifying a legend is, Karon didn't even think about looking at them closely, deciding to run as far as possible until he has the capability to contend with a legend. Entering the legendary realm through this orthodox method indeed makes one immensely powerful. Even legendary races that are born as legends can only rely on their bloodline talents to stand shoulder to shoulder with properly cultivated legends. It's rumored that some exceptionally powerful legendary mages can even fight time dragons. But trying to use this method to enter the legendary realm is extremely difficult, which is why His Majesty the Emperor of the Empire chose another path. The Empire itself is his chosen path to legend, and his ambition doesn't stop there. He wants to step into the domain, become a demigod, and transform his empire into his own land divine kingdom. The old mage's face relaxed again, smiling as if completely unbothered by the emperor's terrifying ambition. Doesn't that mean that it's going to be hard for me and the dragon group to escape this emperor's control? Karon felt a bit gloomy. This news wasn't good for him. He didn't want to learn from someone who could bear long periods of subjugation. Judging by his current developmental speed and the energy accumulation rate of the heart energy vortex, it would take a long time to successfully escape the empire with the dragon group. By then, perhaps the emperor would have already crossed the legendary threshold, making such a chance even further out of reach. The old mage saw through Karon's worry, restraining his smile as he calmly said, "Although the empire is prosperous now, this is the limit allowed by many human kingdoms to have a nation born in this remote corner of the northern continent. If not for needing the Gata Empire to fend off threats from the land of monsters, the empire would not have been allowed to form long ago. Although the emperor understands this, it's his path to legend and he cannot give up. Besides, his lifespan is running short. In just 20 years, he climbed from a mid-tier extraordinary to the peak of the holy sanctuary, bearing a severe cost. The Emperor of the Imperial is vigorously preparing the army, planning logistics and weapons. You only need to wait patiently for a few years to gain your freedom. He is destined to fail." The fine scales on Karon's brow furrowed slightly. The mage's words contained a large amount of information, all highly valuable. Why was the mage doing this? Without hesitating, the red dragon directly asked. The old mage chuckled, "Because you are a smart, talented giant dragon, I wanted to see if you might be worth investing in. It seems you are unlike your foolish, impulsive, and hard to communicate kinsman, so I've decided to invest a bit in you." The old mage stood up from his swaying rocking chair, looking seriously at the red dragon. For nearly 200 years, the gods have not responded to the believers in this world. Perhaps you know more about the evil dragon god Tiamat than I do, yet as far as I know, neither Tiamat nor the Platinum Dragon King Bahamut have responded to their beloved giant dragons for a long time. This plane, no, this entire world might be undergoing some drastic changes I can't comprehend, while those mediocre nobles still bicker over small powers. Smart mages, however, look further ahead, which is why I chose you. Of course, you're not the only one who's benefited from me. A flash of insight struck Karon's mind, recalling what those alien species had said in the gladiatorial arena cell. Indeed, some changes seemed to be happening below the surface of this seemingly peaceful world. Not only were the gods affected, but even powerful demigods were affected, filling his heart already unwilling to remain dormant any longer with a sense of urgency. Yet, the current emperor is someone even holy sanctuary mages are unwilling to directly confront, and Karon currently isn't worth such a massive expense from this mage either. The red dragon lowered his head. "So do you also need to sign a contract with me for your investment?" "Heh," the mage gently shook his head, "I have 10,000 ways to get around the limitations of such a magic contract. Such things can only bind the mediocre, I don't trust it. As for a true god contract, no gods are responding to their believers now. Furthermore, Fools cannot become mages, and short-sighted ones cannot become legends. I'd like to believe you're not a short-sighted dragon. Karon remained silent, pondering for a long while. A fleeting thought passed through his crimson vertical pupils. What if I could accelerate the Emperor's war preparations? You're saying, the old mage's face showed a trace of interest, looking expectantly at the red dragon. The dragon group's territory, though far away and visited only a few times a year, is fertile and prosperous, with endless minerals and resources. If effectively developed and utilized, the output from the territory could quickly satisfy the Emperor's appetite. The mage's eyes brightened. No one doubted the richness of resources in the dragon group's land, but its distance and the gathering of numerous monster tribes made it unfeasible for humans to safely occupy it. Just dealing with the nearly endless monsters and beasts would require a massive manpower expenditure, not to mention needing strong military protection and a significant labor force, making the resource consumption disproportionate to the gains. Yet if the dragon group's beloved maintained security within the territory, it became a different story. Enough labor and craftsmen could turn the endless resources into a gleaming path of success. The old mage's narrowed eyes seemed to shine even brighter than a dragon's pupils. Smiling, he said, if you can control the dragon group's territory, we at the Mage Association can handle the operation. This matter will require a magic contract. Didn't you say you don't trust magic contracts? If Karon had a mirror, he'd probably see a big question mark above his head. Ahem, the old mage coughed twice. For gold coin matters, we'll definitely need a magic contract. Don't worry, I've specifically researched over 1,000 restrictive clauses for magic contracts to ensure neither side exploits any loopholes. Hey, what? The old mage spoke seriously, and by the way, I'm called Lapuz. Source, webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 56-14, Undercurrents. Chapter 56, Chapter 14, Undercurrents. In a spacious room, the long table in front was filled with people, but if you looked closely, these people, though lifelike, had somewhat rigid and unnatural expressions. The faint glimmers of red light emanating from their eyes proved that these were not normal humans, but various magic-controlled puppets. These puppets varied in design but sat neatly beside the table like normal people, enveloping the room in a silent atmosphere. After a long while, an elderly demonic puppet finally spoke, "Are you saying we need to do our utmost to assist His Majesty the Emperor, urging him to start the war prematurely? But doing so will certainly cost us a lot of resources, and this Emperor surely won't let us develop our strength peacefully. By then, many in our family will have to head to the war front, losing a lot of power. Do you think delaying it will allow our families to escape unscathed?" A puppet with a fox-like face made a peculiar sound. "Or do you prefer being a duke over having a duchy?" The elderly puppet shook its head in rebuttal, "I'm just an ordinary nobility, not a duke. Don't slander others casually." The most agile puppet seated at the head of the table spoke, "All right, there's no need to argue over these matters. Everyone here is a significant figure in the imperial realm. What are your opinions?" Its gaze swept over the numerous silent demonic puppets, awaiting their response. Who would want to follow an emperor destined to fail? Someone in the crowd gently laughed. "It's worth doing," a tall puppet rose, patting the table and scanning the other puppets with its eyes. "At that point, everyone here can have their own duchies and kingdoms, rather than accompany that emperor into hell. His target is too grand, I don't want to become his underling, a divine servant. I haven't enjoyed this wonderful world enough yet." "Divine servant? Do you think he'll reach that stage?" "Haha," ridiculed another puppet. The entire room was suddenly filled with a joyful atmosphere, as many puppets echoed the sentiment. "So be it," the puppet at the head of the table observed the scene and summarized. "Winning the war might be difficult for you all, but losing it will be easy, won't it? Besides, we're not plotting any schemes against His Majesty the Emperor, we're making every effort to help our Supreme Emperor. Ha, prompting all the puppets present to laugh, their slightly stilted laughter echoing throughout the spacious room and gradually dissipating. An aura of mysterious magic waves appeared in the room, causing all the magic puppets to transform into scattered stardust. A gentle breeze swept through, and the stardust was moved by the wind, drifting out through the quietly opened window, as if it had never appeared in the room. Karon lay on the ground feigning sleep. There wasn't much room to move, and he was lazy to stir. Over these days, he's been contemplating the words of the old mage Lapus regarding the grand direction of stepping into legend, vaguely forming some ideas about his future path. If he could move in the right direction now, Karon would have a significant advantage over others. The firmer the foundation, the better. No matter what you do, having a powerful aid is crucial. The mere information divulged by the old mage Lapus is knowledge that no treasure in the world could buy. Even if Karon and the dragon group were sold, it might not exchange for the mere few words the old mage spoke last night. Such critical knowledge is only possessed by those practicing the orthodox path of legend, and each legend who breaks through using this method is exceptionally powerful. None lack wealth, mortal treasures might merely be adornments for entertainment for them. It's only mages like the old mage Lapus, born in the orthodox series, who grasp such knowledge, akin to the fundamental heritage of a sect. Karon didn't expect to be treated in such a manner by the mage. He had even prepared himself to lie dormant for a long time. Fortunately, the result pleased the dragon. Perhaps this is the favor he gains, different from ordinary giant dragons.